Chapter 1475. Chu Qingyan sighed and shook her head. I received a letter from Yenluo 2 days ago. She said that Zijing's condition isn't looking good. They're going to take her to a medicinal valley. It's a place mentioned in the medical books. It's very secluded, so they might disappear for a while. Speaking of this, she said in a heavy tone, according to the time difference between the messages, they should have already set off. If we tell Princey now, we won't be able to find them and will only make him more worried and anxious. Why don't we wait for Yenluo to send another message and then tell Princey? It's the most terrible thing for a person to experience great joy or great sorrow. After the little fellow's reminder, Xiao Su followed some clues and realized that his brother had changed a lot compared to before. It seemed that there was nothing worth worrying about anymore. When he heard her words, he couldn't help but nod in agreement. You're right. Since Miss Pang hasn't confirmed the news, it's better not to tell him yet. I just found out a few days ago that third brother fell seriously ill because of Miss Pang. What he needs now is to calm down. Xiao Su frowned. I heard that he hasn't left the house recently. I don't know what he's doing, but he's very depressed. He had been so busy recently that he hadn't paid much attention to his brother. That's why we have to keep him busy. Chu Qingyan winked and smiled mischievously at him. Xiao Su chuckled. He raised his hand and scratched her nose. Okay. When Xiao Ho received Xiao Su's verbal order, he was drinking. After getting his revenge, avenging his hatred, and redressing his grievances, the huge stone in his heart finally disappeared. He felt that there was nothing left to worry about in life. After returning from the palace, he didn't interfere with anything outside. Instead, he soaked himself in wine. It was as if this kind of drunken life could keep him in a deep sleep without worrying about anything. Lin Jiangdong had always been worried about his master's depressed state of mind. When he received the news from the palace, he hurried to find his master. What? Does Imperial Brother want me to dig out Xiao Ran? Although there were several jugs of wine lying by his feet, Xiao Ho's mind was still clear. He could not believe the news he had heard and raised his hand to rub his sore eyes. Lin Jiangdong stepped over the wine jug on the ground and walked in front of him. He repeated the news in the palace without missing a single word. Then he said, presumably His Royal Highness's people are all working hard to rebuild the court, so they can't spare anyone to deal with Xiao Ran. That's why he wants you to help. Xiao Ho raised his eyebrows. This was not impossible. But didn't I help him change his people in the imperial court? How can I help him deal with it? Xiao Ho still had his suspicions. Others might not know, but he had fought with him for so many years. It was impossible for him not to know how cunning this brother of his was. For him to suddenly appear, it was definitely not as simple as a lack of manpower. Lin Jiangdong was afraid that Xiao Su wouldn't accept the invitation, so he sank into his wine and racked his brains to defend Xiao Su. As you know, the previous imperial court was a rotten root. Even if Prince Ying and you worked together to get rid of many officials, they were only those who served in the capital. There are many corrupt and evil local officials, and they can't be replaced overnight. Even if they can be replaced, there aren't that many competent ones. Besides, there were many problems left behind before the emperor's death. It's already very difficult for Prince Ying to stabilize the situation, and it won't be so easy for him to take out more people for other things. It won't be easy to find more manpower. Xiao Ho took a sip of wine and felt that what his teacher said made some sense. Originally, he had no meaning in life and could leave at any time. However, his imperial brother had a troublesome matter here, and he had nothing to do, so he might as well help. He put down the wine jug, brushed his sleeves, and leaned back in his chair. He lazily ordered, send out spies to investigate the last place Xiao Ran appeared. See if you can find any clues. Lin Jiangdong originally thought that it would take a bit of persuasion to persuade his master, but he didn't expect his master to agree so quickly. He was very surprised. Afraid that his master would go back on his word, he immediately went to make preparations. Xiao Ho could tell what he was thinking. He pulled the corners of his mouth, picked up the wine jug and stood up. The autumn wind blew in through the wide open window. In the whistling night wind, he walked step by step to the windowsill. His sleeves were lifted up by the wind, and he looked more like an immortal. However, his back gave people the feeling of loneliness and desolation. "Little rascal, it looks like I'll have to see you later." He tilted his head back and downed a mouthful of wine. It was thick and choking when it entered his throat, but it was also easy to numb the pain. One day later, Xiao Su received the news that Xiao Ho had left the capital. At the time, he was eating dinner with his wife, so he shared the news with her. Third brother does have some tricks. He found Xiao Rant's whereabouts in such a short time. Chu Qingyan was drinking sour fish soup. Ever since she was pregnant, she liked to eat sour food. However, Big Ice Cube thought that eating small sour fruits was not nutritious, so he ordered the Imperial Kitchen to make all kinds of sour food for her to satisfy her appetite. Hearing this, she didn't comment. "I don't think that the person who could cause trouble for you in those years was bad. That person was at least a match for Big Ice Cube." Fortunately, they shook hands and made peace in the end. Xiao Su nodded. "In fact, these brothers are not bad." Chu Qingyan paused. She remembered that Xiao Ho used the identity of a prodigal son to seek stability. She remembered that Xiao Ho used the identity of a sick man to hide his strength and bide his time. She deeply agreed with Big Ice Cube's words. They were all masters of pretending to be pigs to eat tigers, and they were very successful. Thinking of this, she suddenly had a flash of inspiration. She blinked her eyes slyly. "By the way, haven't you been worried about who to send to supervise the construction of the heavily damaged cities these 2 days? Do you have a good candidate?" Now was the time to use people, but basically all the people who could be used had been sent out. Even the cleverest housewife couldn't cook without rice, so Xiao Su had been worried these 2 days. He inadvertently mentioned this matter to the little fellow, but he didn't expect that she still remembered. She smiled. "What do you think of the second prince?" Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. "Why do you have this suggestion? Do you think that a person who can secretly dig a tunnel out of the city doesn't have a few skilled craftsmen?" Xiao Su's calm eyes slightly lit up because of her words. He pulled his wife into his arms and kissed her heavily. Then he pressed his forehead against hers and chuckled. "Ian, you are really a good wife." Chu Qingyan raised her chin. "Of course, don't you know who I am? You can't be so busy while everyone else is having fun. That doesn't make sense. Ian, you are still the one who cares about me." That is dash. Before he finished speaking, he was sealed with a kiss. A certain someone who was swaggering around the night market sneezed loudly. He touched his nose and looked at the sky. It was getting colder and colder. It seemed that it was time to go home and get more clothes. So a certain someone swaggered back to the residence, completely unaware that he had been schemed against by 2 foxes. Chapter 1476. Time flew by like flowing water, never to return. However, during this period of time, the truth of many things had surfaced. For example, those rumors were spread by the Moon Palace. For example, the cases that the Liang and Fu families were involved in were far more than what was on the surface. Many of them were heinous and were condemned by thousands of people. Regarding rumors, although the common people were at the bottom of society and were easily swayed by false words, they still used their own eyes to see. Xiao Su had done so much for the country and the people, and they had all seen it with their own eyes. He wasn't as ignorant and easy to manipulate as the people behind the scenes thought. Thus, not long after, many of the common people spontaneously organized groups to clarify the matter. Once someone said something bad about Xiao Su, they would help explain. In their opinion, even if Xiao Su wasn't the rightful emperor, they were still willing to support him as the emperor. When Jasper told her master about these rumors, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. The eyes of the common people were indeed sharp. She also understood one thing. Perhaps everything you did seemed so small at the time, but when it accumulated to a certain extent, it would slowly become an unshakable existence. The things that the ice cube had done over the years had undoubtedly laid the foundation for today's situation. As the saying goes, the people's hearts were what they wanted. Presumably, this was the scene that Sichuan Emperor was afraid to see. As for how many dirty things the Liang and Fu families were involved in, Chu Qingyan didn't want to hear about it. She didn't want to pollute the ears of the baby in her stomach. During this period of time, some things related to the people around her also happened. Lin Fengyi was transferred back to the capital to take up a post. Xiaoli also stayed in the capital with him and often went to the palace to accompany her. After those few big battles, Sima had already returned to Lan Manor. From what she heard, she was also going back to make a baby. Ever since her father recovered his memories, he was like a wild horse that had broken free of its stalk. He was shining brightly at the border and couldn't be pulled back no matter what. Everything seemed to be getting better. Chu Qingyan was very pleased. However, today, when Ethereal came to check her pulse as usual, she saw his gloomy face. According to Huoling, Yan Luo's birthday was in 2 days. Unfortunately, he couldn't even see the beauty, let alone celebrate with her. Chu Qingyan then thought of Ethereal and Yan Luo, this pair of ill-fated mandarin ducks. They were separated not long after they reunited. Therefore, she thought of Zijing and Xiao Ho and couldn't help but sigh. She rubbed her bulging belly. Right now, her only wish was that these unfortunate couples could get married as soon as possible. Chu Machen's mother, who was sitting aside sewing children's clothes, was worried when she saw her daughter's worried look. She put down the needle and thread in her hand and patted the back of her daughter's hand. When her daughter looked at her, she smiled kindly and said, "Everyone has their own fate. Take your father and I for example. After going through so many hardships, we finally welcomed sweetness. So, you have to believe that people who truly love each other, no matter how many hardships the heavens throw at them, as long as their faith is firm, they will finally be reunited and happy." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile when she heard this. Why did she always forget such a simple principle at such a crucial moment? "Mother, you're the best. It's all thanks to you that father can pick up a weapon again." She was very grateful. Chu Machen's mother smiled and her eyes were gentle. "Even if your father can't remember, it doesn't matter. As long as he's still the same person, as long as he's still alive, I'm satisfied." Chu Qingyan was slightly dazed. Yes, as long as he was still alive, there would be hope. "Zijing, you have to live on." In the distant valley, the person who had been silent all this time suddenly moved his finger. Live? There would be hope only if she was alive. She could only see him if she was alive. It was already late autumn and early winter. Xiao Yao and Xiao Ho returned to the capital one after the other and met in the palace. At this time, Xiao Su hadn't entered the palace yet, but the two of them were already chatting. Xiao Yao greeted his younger brother, whom he hadn't seen for the past 10 or 20 years, in a friendly manner. "I heard that you were recently sent out. Have you completed your mission?" Perhaps because they weren't familiar with each other, Xiao Ho nodded and replied politely, "It's about Xiao Ran. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint eldest brother's expectations. How about you? Why do you look so travel-worn?" Xiao Yao didn't have the self-awareness to hide his feelings at all. Perhaps it was because he didn't need to hide his feelings, so he put on a bitter face. "Don't mention it. Eldest brother is so inhumane. He actually sent me, a person who can't tell the difference between physical activity and grain, to supervise the construction of the city. To put it nicely, he made me an imperial envoy, but to put it bluntly, I was sent to build walls and bridges. I didn't have many good days. Every day, I worked with stone and mud, and I had to supervise the construction before dawn. I woke up earlier than the chickens and slept later than the dogs. I'm so sad." Xiao Ho knew how capable his second brother was. He was being modest, but it was precisely because of his bitterness that the two of them became closer. Moreover, Xiao Ho also felt the same way. Second brother is right. Eldest brother sent us out while he enjoyed his life here. It's really too much. When Xiao Yao heard that he had found an ally, he poured out his bitterness even more vigorously. Yes. We're all in the same boat. It's really hard. You don't know, I've never not bathed for 3 days. Oh my God, I don't even dare to smell that smell. But the officials next to me haven't bathed for at least half a month. You don't know, I'm about to vomit from the smell. But our eldest brother gave the order, so I have to complete it even if I have to kneel. Xiao Yao was originally not a chatterbox, but he couldn't bear the bitterness this time. Moreover, he also wanted to talk to this mysterious younger brother and build a good relationship. After all, he felt that this younger brother was very resourceful. He was very curious, so once he started talking, he couldn't stop talking. When he saw Xiao give him a meaningful look, he didn't react. "Younger brother, what's wrong with your eyes? Do you want the imperial physician to take a look at you? Don't have a crooked mouth and slanted eyes at such a young age." Xiao's eyes twitched and he gave up on reminding him. At this time, a cold voice sounded from behind Xiao. "Second brother has a problem with me? Is the crime so difficult to record?" A cold wind blew from behind, and Xiao's body stiffened. He glanced at Xiao from the corner of his eyes full of accusation. The latter shrugged at him. "I've already given you a hint, okay? Who told you to talk to your heart's content?" Xiao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. But the moment he turned around, his face had already changed into a brilliant smile, and he threw himself at him. "Older brother, it's really great to see you. Did you know that your younger brother?" Xiao waved his hand, and the person who threw himself at him was sent flying. He sprawled on the wall like a gecko. Those intermittent words continued to be heard. Xiao raised his hand to cover his face. He really didn't want to admit that this person was his brother. How embarrassing. Chapter 1477. Xiao didn't pay any attention to this idiot of a younger brother and directly walked past him to sit at the head of the table. When Xiao saw this, he couldn't say anything and simply stood at attention. "You've worked hard. How did it go?" Xiao asked Xiao. Xiao nodded and directly said, "Although we haven't found out Xiao Rant's exact whereabouts, we have a general idea of their current location." "Where is he?" "Near the capital." Once these words were spoken, everyone fell silent. Xiao originally wanted to wail a few times to gain the sympathy of his brother, but the two of them didn't even look at him. They just talked among themselves. Feeling helpless, he could only pull himself down from the wall. Shaking his shoulders, he slowly moved to the front. At this moment, the two of them were talking about this. Xiao lightly snorted. At this time, he still dares to come back. Some people are willing to do anything in order to take a gamble. And just as the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. It's not like he doesn't have capable people around him, so it's not strange that he can think of this. Moreover, Imperial Brother is about to ascend the throne. If he doesn't do something before then, when the dust settles, if he wants to cause trouble, he'll be overestimating himself. Xiao's words were explained from a fair point of view, and everyone, including Xiao, expressed their approval. Xiao made a "oh" sound, as if he was seeing this younger brother for the first time. He looked at him curiously. "I couldn't tell, but third brother is actually so organized and so accurate in judging people. Second brother admires you." Xiao raised his eyebrows. Shouldn't this be something that people from the imperial family should have? Could it be that second brother needs to be sent back to the furnace to be remade? That can't be. Xiao felt that he had been counterattacked. He was clearly praising him. "Third brother, you're not being kind. Big brother is praising you. You're hurting big brother's heart," Xiao said as he put his hand to his heart. Xiao raised his eyebrows. It turned out that his intelligence was wrong. Second brother's intelligence couldn't be better, only worse. "Is second brother's heart made of glass? Well said, well said. Treat me well in the future. Otherwise, I'll break it for you to see one day." Xiao waved his hand and laughed. Xiao was just about to say yes when he was interrupted by this idiot. However, Xiao did not intend to correct him. It was rare for his brothers to gather together, and he could also listen to their seemingly competitive but actually joyful conversation. It could also be considered as finding some fun after a busy day. In the past, the two of them did not see each other often. Even if they did not speak much. Moreover, because of their different standpoints, they did not have any interactions at all. Now that the barrier between the two of them had been removed, there were no obstacles. In addition, the two of them were now under the command of their eldest brother. They empathized with each other and found each other more pleasing to the eye. In addition, they were brothers by blood. With that layer of blood, needless to say, there was a sense of closeness. However, they had never been so close to brothers. Both of them felt fresh and curious in their hearts, but more than that, they felt relaxed. In the imperial family, there were very few brothers who were close. However, at this moment, they did not care about power or influence. The more they looked at each other, the more they regretted that they had not met earlier. Also, because they had missed so many years, they wanted to make up for it. When the two of them were about to go drinking together and walk shoulder to shoulder, Xiao Su said something to nip this idea in the bud. He felt a headache coming on. These two brothers were really unreliable. If you want to go and play, you can. But let's finish the business first. Xiao Su knocked on the table. Only then did the two of them stop. They coughed lightly and intended to get to the point. Xiao Yao was the first to shout, "Eldest brother, those jobs are really not for humans." I was almost tortured to death. Just as he was about to start complaining, Xiao Su stopped him with a sentence, "You still want to go again, This last sentence was simply so confusing that it made people want to immediately put up walls, tables, and floors and disappear. Xiao Yao immediately swallowed the words that were stuck in his throat. Then he began to seriously report the results of his trip. Xiao Ho secretly shook his head at the side. As expected, he was a person who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. Although Xiao Yao was usually not very reliable when it came to business, especially when it was a big matter, he was more reliable than most people. Under his supervision and control, the reconstruction of the city was already on the right track. "Brother, didn't you send me out because you wanted me to use my status as a prince to suppress the arrogance of the people below? I know all about it. So this time, I didn't lose face for you. I didn't let them down when they needed to be taught a lesson." This time, Xiao Su didn't leave him hanging. He nodded and praised, "You did well this time." What Xiao Yao said was far less detailed than the information he received. Through this trip, he had a deep understanding of his imperial brother's abilities. It was indeed as the little fellow had said. These were all sly foxes who hid their abilities well. They just didn't like to show off. Otherwise, how bad could they be if they grew up in the imperial family? It was rare to be praised by the eldest brother. Xiao Yao's tail was wagging. Then, seeing that I worked hard and performed well, could imperial brother reward me a little? A faint smile appeared in Xiao Su's eyes. This fellow must have taken a fancy to something. "Say it." Xiao Yao's eyes lit up. "Then I'll say it directly. Imperial sister-in-law has 10 jars of the best wine." As he spoke, he didn't forget to praise his younger brother. "Third brother, let me tell you, imperial sister-in-law's wine is really good. The taste is indescribably good. If imperial brother approves, I'll treat you to a drink." Seeing Xiao Yao pat his chest confidently, Xiao Ho wasn't interested in the wine. Instead, he felt that his second brother was quite in line with the unruly and bold image that was rumored outside. Xiao Su was amused by his gluttonous look. He originally wanted to wave his hand and reward him, but just as he was about to speak, he suddenly changed his mind. "I can give you this wine, but you haven't finished your business yet, so I'll give you half for now." Wasn't it all finished? What else was there? When his two younger brothers looked at him, Xiao Su said with a faint smile, "I need you to put on a show to lure the snake out of its hole." The two of them looked at each other. "Xiao Yao, we seem to have been tricked by imperial brother again?" "Xiao Ho, congratulations, your intuition is correct." 2 hours later, the two brothers in distress walked out of the palace with their arms around each other's shoulders and sighed. "Why are we so unlucky?" "So, you want to have a drink to relieve your boredom?" "The 5 jars of wine should have been sent to your residence by now." That third brother, second brother's stomach hurts a little. "I'll drink next time." But seeing Xiao Yao's figure dashing home, Xiao Ho couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that he had to add a few more words to this second brother's information. Addicted to wine, stingy. Chapter 1478. After watching the two brothers leave, Xiao Su sat in the hall for a while. He met with the officials and then prepared to return to the bedroom. Turin and Hualing were at his side. Hualing saw his master was in a good mood and couldn't help but say with a smile, It's hard to imagine that second imperial prince and third imperial prince would get along peacefully one day. At least, I never thought it would happen in the past decade or two. Turin nodded in agreement. Xiao Su's eyes curved slightly, and his usually cold voice was tinged with the warmth of the setting sun. In the past, we didn't have the chance, nor did we allow it. Now that there are no obstacles and they are generous and don't mind, it's normal for them to get along. Hualing and Turin felt that their master was right. Turin sighed. If it wasn't for these matters, this subordinate really wouldn't have thought that these two imperial princes are such hidden experts. They have done some things better than Xiao cavalry. This subordinate admires them. Xiao cavalry is involved in many levels. It is normal that some places are not as precise as them. However, you cannot relax. You still have to improve and strengthen the areas that need to be improved. Xiao Su reminded verbally. The two nodded in agreement. As soon as they turned the corner, they arrived at the bedchamber. Xiao Su raised his hand, and the two understood tacitly and retreated one after another. At this time, they couldn't act like lanterns and be an eyesore to their master and the little princess. Entering the hall, he heard the little fellow's clear and melodious voice talking to the person next to him. Xiao Su felt that the tiredness of the busy day was completely put down by the gentle and warm voice. Chu Qingyan turned her head and saw the person slowly walking over. She instinctively stopped talking. Jasper and Xining also saw the person and hurriedly bowed. Then they perceptively retreated to make room for the young couple. At this time, Chu Qingyan was 6 or 7 years old. Her belly was bigger, but other than her belly, she was still thin. There were no obvious changes, but her small face was more moving. When she walked over, Xiao Ho strode over and took her in. How was it today? Did the baby make a fuss? At this time, there was already fetal movement. Sometimes, Xiao Su could even touch the baby's hand. It was very magical. However, because of this, the baby began to toss and turn. Chu Qingyan shook her head. Not really. She just likes to move around. She looks like a lively person. It's good to be lively, just like you, Xiao Su said seriously. Chu Qingyan chuckled. I think it's better to be like you. You're steady and not noisy, so I don't have to worry about you. Oh. Xiao Su paused. It feels good to be praised by my wife. Hearing this, she burst out laughing. When did you become so humorous? Xiao Su felt that he was a little different from usual today. He couldn't help but rub the space between his eyebrows. Maybe I was infected by second brother. Speaking of the second prince, are you going to see him today? It's not easy for you to come back alive, Chu Qingyan teased him. She slowly sat down as he supported her. She wailed and howled as soon as she came back. The roof was about to be lifted. Xiao Su recalled his second brother's appearance and shook his head with a laugh. That's right, third brother is also back. Recently, because her belly was getting bigger, Chu Qingyan didn't have much energy to help share his burden. Like before, she didn't want to ask. However, seeing that he was in an exceptionally good mood today, she couldn't help but be curious. You guys ran into each other? You didn't fight, right? Xiao Su deliberately kept her in suspense. Just. Chu Qingyan patted him lightly and snorted. You're trying to keep me in suspense? Fine, you can sleep in the side chamber tonight. When she said this, Xiao Su coughed lightly and immediately surrendered. Without his wife to warm his bed, he couldn't sleep well. Hearing the big ice cube's explanation, Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. No wonder everyone says that if you don't belong to the same family, you won't enter the same family. It's a pity that you wasted so much time. Xiao Su hugged her and listened to her sigh. Actually, from another perspective, it's better to come late than never. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but nod when she heard this. The big ice cube was right. As long as they were still alive, there was still the possibility of happiness. Xiao Rant's matter has reached a point where we have to solve it. Chu Qingyan, who was about to take a nap with her eyes closed, was woken up by these words. She opened her eyes wide and was full of curiosity. What did he do this time? It's not him, but it has something to do with him. Third brother found that the Moon Palace was recruiting people in the Jianghu. Although it was done secretly, he still found a lot of clues. If we don't stop it, with the power of the Moon Palace, the situation will be difficult to deal with. Xiao Su's voice was very calm, but Chu Qingyan could hear his dissatisfaction. She wondered if Xiao Ran could stop digging his own grave. You already have a plan? Since the big ice cube said this, it meant that he already had a plan. Yes, there have been some strange movements in the prison recently. Some people have set their eyes on that place and tried to break in. However, they were all stopped. Although many people were captured, they all committed suicide in the end by consuming poison. However, we still managed to find out their identities. They are all from Moon Palace. What do they want to do? Their target is the patriarch of the Fu clan and a few core members, Xiao Su said unhurriedly. The Moon Palace should be doing this for Imperial Concubine Moon to break into the Celestial Prison, but there is another reason. Although I have eliminated the Fu clan, there are some things that cannot be removed in a short period of time. They probably want to use the Fu clan to do something. After all, they have been important officials for so many years, they must have something that can contend against the imperial court. Chu Qingyan hugged him and leaned in his arms. Her voice was lazy but penetrating. Big Ice Cube, what are you worried about? The Liang family. Prince Yi's mansion welcomed back their masters who hadn't been seen for many months. Everyone was smiling. But since Princess Pang left, the mansion was no longer lively. On the contrary, it was even more deserted. Nobody knew if it was an illusion or if it was real. Xiao Ho didn't feel the joy of returning home. He took off his clothes and changed into a clean one. Then he locked himself in the study and didn't even come out for dinner. The housekeeper wanted to knock on the door, but just as he raised his hand, he sighed and put it down. He planned to go to the kitchen and inform the servants to keep the food warm in case his master wanted to eat it. However, as soon as the housekeeper turned around, he met a pair of big eyes. He was so scared that he almost fell down the stairs. Fortunately, the servant had some self-awareness and pulled him back. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to put his old bones back together. Who are you? After the housekeeper calmed himself down, he raised his head and wanted to scold the servant who didn't have eyes for approaching him. But when he saw who it was, he was stunned. The man was holding a pot of wine and leaning against a pillar casually. He said impatiently, I am Yahweh's elder brother. By the way, where is he? I have walked around and didn't see him. Don't tell me he went to sleep? Elder brother? Yahweh's elder brother? The housekeeper felt that he didn't know how to react. You are the second prince? Don't I look like him? His face was threatening. Yes. The housekeeper nodded repeatedly. The door of the study opened and Xiao Ho appeared in front of them. Why you here? Oh, I climbed over the wall. The old housekeeper staggered and almost fell again. He had never seen such an honest person these days. Chapter 1479. The Liang family? Chu Qingyan thought about these two words carefully, as if she had understood something, but could not see it clearly. Her eyes were filled with confusion, but she looked with pity at the person who was sleeping on her shoulder with his eyes closed. In front of her, he was the most moving lover in the world, without any disguise. He was so quiet and serene that it was as if a distant green mountain was slowly unfolding in front of her. Those sharp edges and austere sharpness were all hidden in the mist of the mountains and rivers. Up in the sleeve had once said that only in front of her did Xiao Su seem to take off his armor and put on a black robe, standing in the world. He was a leisurely, elegant scholar, without the shackles of the country and the world, without the heavy burden of moral responsibility. He lived completely for himself. However, no matter when she thought that the big ice cube had escaped from the vortex of the past, reality would always ruthlessly slap him in the face, making him see clearly how helpless and unstoppable the world was. Although her eyes were closed, it was hard for him not to notice her gaze, which was like a breeze sweeping across his face. She didn't know how much strength she had used when she held his hand, but he knew very well. He did not open his eyes, but held her tightly in his arms. When he opened his mouth, his voice was soft and light, with an almost inaudible sigh. Mother said that she wanted to see me. She was slightly stunned. If we want to punish the Fu family, we must not let the Liang family off. Their evil deeds are clear. Even if the court let them off, the people will see it. I originally thought that I would not be affected by this, but I have to take into account the blood on my body. After all, the blood of the Liang family still flowed in his body, and this could not be wiped away. Big Ice Cube, I understand. It's okay, just do what you think. After all these years, there should be an end, right? She hugged his waist, leaning her face against his chest as she spoke slowly. There were no parents in the world. Empress Liang felt sorry for Big Ice Cube. She had never played the role of a proper mother after he was born. However, there were many things that could not be given up easily. All these years, she had used Big Ice Cube to achieve her own goals. However, she had never hurt him like the Sichuan emperor. Moreover, after that day, they realized that Empress Liang was also a victim. She was a pitiful woman who was deeply hurt by the emperor's heartlessness in the palace. Even if a person was at fault, the environment was also at fault. It was just that in ancient times, the feudal monarchy where men were superior to women could not be overturned at this time. Only through the long flow of history and the change of dynasties could they move towards equality and freedom. She patted his back gently, just like how she used to comfort herself. At this moment, it didn't seem like she was relying on him. Instead, it seemed like he was drawing warmth and strength from her. Big Ice Cube, you're good? You're really good. You didn't change because of betrayal and hurt. You didn't become a cold-blooded and heartless person because you were abandoned and framed. This kind of you, gentle and warm, is the Big Ice Cube that I've always known and liked. Since ancient times, it's difficult to be loyal and filial at the same time. No matter what decision you make, I'll support you. Xiao Su suddenly chuckled and let go of her. He straightened his back and looked at her with a clear and bright gaze. It was as if he had crushed a pool of stars, so bright and dazzling, so enchanting. I feel like I've been infected by your personality recently and have become sentimental. Faced with his teasing, Chu Qingyan directly gave him a cushion. Burning the bridge after crossing the river? Sleep in the side chamber tonight. I won't send you off. The smile on his good-looking face did not diminish. Instead, it was even brighter. He took the cushion that she threw over and casually placed it in her arms. He leaned closer to her and breathed on her sensitive earlobe. Before she could react, he had already carried her and the cushion. The night is long. How can this husband bear to let his wife sleep alone? Good girl, you can't do a surprise attack like this. My wife is also enjoying it, isn't she? Shameless. As long as I don't sleep in the side chamber, it doesn't matter if I don't want my face. She was completely convinced. A second ago, he was confiding in her heart, and the next second, he turned into a wolf. Really, forget it, she was going to feed the wolf. In the lonely and silent Chaoyang Palace. Your Highness, His Highness still doesn't want to see you. Luo Yun stood at the side with a helpless expression. Empress Liang was not surprised at all. She faintly responded and casually fiddled with the cup on the table. Her eyes were absent-minded and her mind was elsewhere. Then what should we do? Luo Yun asked cautiously. Ever since His Majesty passed away, Her Highness's personality had undergone a huge change. It was as if she had become a different person. Although she did not get angry as often as before, her absent-minded appearance was even more worrying. Empress Liang collected her thoughts and sighed softly. If I can't see Su-er, then let's see Chu Qingyan. Luo Yun was stunned for a moment, but she still agreed. This old servant will deliver the invitation tomorrow. If this was in the past, how could a mother-in-law speak so humbly to see her daughter-in-law? However, things were different now, and the two people in the palace were not easy to meet. The palace fell into a dead silence again. Inside Prince Yi's estate. Xiao Yao asked the old steward to prepare a table of dishes without any awkwardness, saying that he wanted to drink and chat merrily with his younger brother. Although the old steward was not clear about the current state of the imperial court, this was the first time Xiao Yao had visited, so he did not know what to do. He cautiously tried to see what his lord was thinking, but his lord did not seem to care at all. The old steward could only support his old bones and trot to the kitchen to order the servants to prepare. Xiao Yao wanted to ask the old steward to prepare the table and chairs, but he caught sight of the stone table and chairs in the courtyard from the corner of his eye. He jumped over without hesitation and opened the wooden cork at the same time. The aroma of wine just overflowed and was blown away by the evening wind. Xiao Yao sniffed and felt that he was about to get drunk. "Third brother, come quickly or I will drink alone." Xiao Ho looked at the person who was waving at him. He wanted to refuse, but he still walked over uncontrollably. "Don't you have a stomachache?" He smiled faintly and mercilessly said the excuse that person had used to brush him off in front of the palace gates today. Xiao Yao laughed mischievously. "It doesn't hurt now." "Oh, you are willing to take out this wine?" Xiao Ho teased him. Xiao Yao's face was a bit embarrassed. He looked away and said embarrassedly, "I was wrong. If I have good things in the future, I will definitely share them with you." A strange feeling filled his heart. Other than Little Rascal, no one had said that they would share with him. Xiao Ho felt that this feeling made his heart feel warm. Second brother was really doing what he said. For example, he really had taken out the wine now. Xiao Ho knew how much he liked this wine. It was obvious from his intoxicated look when he opened the cork just now. However, he did not drink it immediately and insisted on waiting for him to sit down. "Why did you suddenly want to drink with me?" This was the first question Xiao Ho had when he saw him tonight. Xiao Yao rubbed his nose. "I feel that you might not like to hear me say it." "Then don't say it." "But if I don't say it, I will feel uncomfortable holding it in. I heard that you were hurt by love. I feel that as your older brother, I should express my concern. That's why I brought the wine over to accompany you to relieve your worries." When the old steward who was walking over heard this, he almost made intimate contact with the ground again. "Oh my lord, don't say it if you don't know how to speak." Chapter 1480. Finishing, Xiao Yao shook the wine pot without any self-awareness and asked, "Are you satisfied with my answer?" Xiao Ho showed his sinister teeth. "Second brother, in the future, it's better to hold back some words or else." The word "otherwise" was well hidden, but for some reason, it made Xiao Yao feel a chill run down his spine. He swallowed his saliva. "It's over. Why is this third brother of mine the same as big brother, always scaring people?" But at this time, he had to regain his older brother's aura. He slammed the table heavily. "Where is everyone? Where is everyone? Where did they go? Wine cup, where are the dishes?" The old steward shuddered. They had been caught in the crossfire. Coming. In a short while, the stone table was filled with dishes. Xiao Yao nodded in satisfaction. "Your Wang Fu looks cold and cheerless, but the efficiency is quite high." Xiao Ho didn't comment, but the old steward on the side finally let out a sigh of relief. This master finally stopped looking for trouble. At this time, a full wine cup was handed to Xiao Ho. At the end of the hand, Xiao Yao laughed heartily. "Try it. It's brewed by Imperial sister-in-law's people. Those crooked melons and dates on the market can't compare at all." Xiao Ho didn't decline. He took the cup, clinked it with his and drank it in one gulp. Xiao Yao held the cup and sized him up. He smiled faintly and said, "Is there a problem? You've really been hurt deeply. Alas, although this wine isn't strong, the aftereffects are very strong. I know you're also a wine taster. Could it be that you want to drown your sorrows with wine? You should take your time to taste it. Only then would it be in line with your elegant title." In the face of Xiao Yao's repeated stabs, the old butler wished he had a rag in his hand so that he could cover Xiao Yao's mouth. Didn't he know what it meant to not sprinkle salt on other people's wounds? However, Xiao Ho seemed to be used to his brother's habit of poking at scars wherever there were scars. He didn't even lift his eyelids as he filled his own glass with wine. His voice was still as gentle as ever as he said, "Reputation and good reviews are just worldly possessions. Why bother with these things? It's not good to live a happy and uncomfortable life. I thought second brother would understand this better than me." "Of course, I understand that. I just feel that." Xiao Yao paused, thinking about how to perfectly express the meaning in his heart. Xiao Ho took a sip and said, "I just feel like we don't belong to the same world. Yes. I just didn't expect us to be so compatible. I thought that first imperial brother wouldn't be compatible with me. I didn't expect the three of us to be so similar. It's really a pleasant surprise. No matter what, we have to celebrate." As he spoke, Xiao raised his wine glass and toasted him. Xiao raised his hand and clinked it with Xiao's. The two tilted their heads back and drank. Sometimes, good wine wasn't used to be savored, but to be used to relax the heart. "Third brother, tell me, what kind of person is the white moonlight in your heart that you can't forget her?" Xiao swirled the wine glass in his hand and looked at the rippling wine inside as he asked as if he didn't mean it. "Why didn't you mention it?" The old steward felt that his little heart couldn't take it anymore. He ordered the servants to serve him well and left with a sigh. He was afraid that he would die here if he stayed any longer. Xiao didn't get angry, nor did he show any sadness. His gaze crossed the courtyard and looked at the swaying stars in the night sky. His eyes were gentle. "She's a mischievous and troublesome little rascal who always gives people headaches. She's not gentle, doesn't understand others, and doesn't have the modesty of a lady from a noble family. When she does something wrong, she acts coquettishly to get away with it. On the surface, she looks pure and harmless, but in reality, she's very clever." Xiao was stunned. After listing so many shortcomings, why did it feel like there was more spoiling than headaches? More gentleness than complaint? It was just that no one would have thought that his incomparably romantic younger brother would fall in love with such a type of girl. At this moment, he heard Xiao's soft voice after drinking a cup of wine. "But she's also very warm. Very warm, so warm that even if he exhausted everything, he still wanted to leave behind the white moonlight. However, everything was just a reflection of the moon in the water." Xiao slightly widened his eyes. "That's right, people like them who came from the imperial family stepped on bones and crossed rivers of blood. When they were born, they were abandoned by all the warmth in the world. They lived alone and stubbornly. Only strength was the path forward. Therefore, this caused them to be born cold-blooded and destined to not know how to love or be loved." Xiao had been taught by his mother to hide his edge early on, which was why he was able to live peacefully until now. However, people like eldest brother and third brother in front of him were people who sacrificed themselves for power. They had always lived alone and in despair. People like them could only be saved by warmth. For example, Chu Qingyan and Pang Zhijing. Chu Qingyan helped eldest brother walk down from the altar. He shed his responsibility and loyalty. He was no longer cold and learned to smile. And Pang Zhijing freed third brother from hatred and loosened the shackles. He learned how to smile from the bottom of his heart and not let his smile become his disguise. However, God loved to tease people the most. He had experienced warmth, but he cruelly stripped it away. Xiao's gaze was pitiful as he watched third brother drink cup after cup. After a moment of silence, he also drank the wine. He was a carefree wanderer, but he also knew the pain of love. Although he couldn't empathize, he still felt pain for his younger brother. The moon was high in the sky when he drank. Xiao was already a little drunk, but he always had a good reputation of not getting drunk after 1,000 cups. He was still very sober. Seeing that there were no maidservants beside him, he propped up his chin and suddenly remembered something. He smiled and said, "That's right, I brought you a surprise before I came." Xiao was also a little drunk, but he was still rational. When he heard his words, he responded lightly, as if he didn't believe in any surprises. Xiao didn't mind and continued to smile. "I brought you a few beautiful maidservants. Their appearances are outstanding, and they are even prettier than the top beauties in the capital. What do you think? Brother, I am a good friend, right?" Xiao looked at him indifferently. Xiao was talking excitedly. "You don't know, but these few are even more considerate than the ones I gave to eldest brother a few years ago. They are good at zither, chess, poetry, calligraphy, and painting." After he finished talking, Xiao replied, "And then?" Xiao was stunned and said dejectedly, "They were thrown out of the residence by eldest brother, and I was kicked out as well." Xiao nodded. Xiao was trying to figure out if he should agree or not. In the next moment, the world spun and he was kicked out of the residence. The beautiful maidservants that accompanied him were thrown out without mercy. They were stacked on top of him like a human pyramid. He was about to be squashed into a meat patty. They were clearly drinking well just now, but they kicked him out without saying a word. His brother's boat capsized just like that. "You all of you good? If I care about you in the future, I will take your surname." Poor Xiao. No matter how he cared, they still had the same surname. Chapter 1481. Hearing the servant report everything that had happened outside the Fu, Xiao Ho laughed and shook his head. This second brother was really interesting. He ordered, "Increase the security of the Fu. If you meet the second prince by the wall in the future, ask him to use the front door." The servant understood. So it was to guard against fire, theft, and the second prince. The wine pot on the stone table was not empty. He poured himself a cup, but he recalled Xiao Yao's words. The person has passed away, and the beauty is no longer here. Why not let go of your obsession, extricate yourself from the past, and live the rest of your life well? Xiao Ho drank the wine. The previous sweetness turned into bitterness at the tip of his tongue. He smiled faintly. Since it had become an obsession, how could he extricate himself? Moreover, he had never thought of forgetting. Her every frown and smile had been engraved in his mind. Just like the wind blowing in front of his eyes, he felt like it was her breath. The shadows of the trees on the ground were like her dancing dress. His longing had entered his bones, his soul, and had become one with him. They had long been inseparable. Why did he choose to let go of her? He could leave everything behind and go with her. He could go to heaven and earth, the human world, the gates of hell, as long as she was there. The alcohol surged, and he walked forward unsteadily. Life was like a dream. How much joy did he have? Only Du Kong was generous and unforgettable. Since that was the case, it was better to be drunk. Perhaps he could still meet her in his dreams. Recently, she had often entered his dreams. He could see changes in her every time. For example, her hair was longer, and her belly was bigger. So good. In his dreams, he and she were pregnant with the fruit of their love. Let's just think like this. Chu Qingyan woke up early in the morning. Compared to her sleepy state in the past, she was now a person who did not feel sleepy before the sun rose. She helplessly rubbed her belly. What a naughty child. She did not know how much trouble it would cause after it was born. After scolding the baby in her heart, she turned to look at the person sleeping beside her. He slept very well. Before he fell asleep, he had hugged her, gently hugging her to his chest. Now that she had woken up, she was still well protected by him, as if he was hugging the most precious thing in his life. She smiled softly. The sky was still dark, and according to Big Ice Cube's biological clock, he would only wake up in an hour. Every time this happened, it would be Big Ice Cube's exclusive time. She could greedily and unscrupulously size him up. But she would not touch him. The Big Ice Cube had the sharpest senses of a soldier. If she woke him up, not only would it shorten his sleep time, it would also bring her punishment. Of course, the punishment was always sweet, but she did not want to disturb him, so she just watched quietly. Time is a good thing. It allows people to see a lot of things clearly and also allows people to possess a lot of things. When everything was almost stable, Chu Qingyan would also think about the past. In the past, she did not have the leisure or the time to think about it. However, after having the baby, she spent more time thinking about it. The person in front of her was still so elegant and handsome, but compared to the past, he was less fierce, cold, and immature. Instead, he was more gentle, warm, and mature. Time would erase a person's edges and corners, but it would not make him lose his high-spirited spirit. Instead, it would polish him better, and he would learn how to love and be loved. She was very fortunate to be a participant, a bystander, and the last supporter. He was the scenery that she would never tire of looking at, the city that she had always wanted to protect. Sleepiness gradually overwhelmed her. She listened to his strong heartbeat and slowly closed her eyes. The moon fell below the horizon and the sky began to brighten. Xiao Su woke up before dawn. He was reluctant to part with the warm and fragrant jade in his arms. He gently and lovingly hugged her back, gently caressing her bulging belly. That was the proof of their love. After a while, he let go and quietly got up. But when a man of iron had something to worry about, a steel spear could also become soft. After Xiao Su freshened up, he walked out of the hall. He ordered the palace servants not to disturb her and carefully asked about her meal today. Only then did he feel relieved to go to the morning court. Although he had not yet ascended the throne, what he did was almost the same as an emperor. Turin and the fire spirit accompanied him on his left and right, gradually going away. Jasper and Xining had already gotten up in the morning to replace the two of them outside the hall. This was the beginning of the day. When Chu Qingyan woke up, it was already late in the morning. She looked at the empty bed beside her, stroked her belly and smiled. "Baby, your papa has already gone to work hard to earn money to support the family. We should also get up." Perhaps hearing the movement inside, Jasper and Xining opened the curtain and came in. Seeing that their master had already gotten up, they immediately went to greet her and took over their own tasks. "Master's complexion is so good today," Xining praised with a smile. Chu Qingyan touched her face and sighed softly. "After eating and sleeping, how bad can my complexion be? I'm just afraid that I'll be so fat that I won't even be able to recognize myself." Xining was amused. She shook her head and seriously analyzed. "Master, you see, there are very few people who can maintain such a good figure after being pregnant. You, on the other hand, not only did you not gain weight, you're also becoming more and more beautiful. If it weren't for the fact that this servant is a woman, this servant would have fallen under your pomegranate skirt." Chu Qingyan giggled and turned to Jasper and pointed at this little girl. "Do you feel that your mouth is getting sweeter and sweeter, and you're getting better at lying through your teeth?" This subordinate saw Xining smearing honey on her mouth this morning before coming over. Jasper said seriously. Chu Qingyan held her belly and laughed. Since when did this cold-faced girl like her know how to joke? It was really too fun. The absolute contrast was cute. On the other hand, after Xining finished fixing the hair ornaments on her master's head, she stomped her feet and said angrily, "You're all bullies. Jasper, you're too bad, too bad." As she said this, she took the water basin and walked out. When she walked out, she stomped on the floor loudly, causing her master to laugh without giving her any face. Jasper also couldn't help but laugh. Early in the morning, with such a happy person to play and laugh with, her mood for the whole day was much better. Not long after, the little girl who left, in a fit of anger, came back, but the expression on her face was much more serious. "What's wrong?" "Master, the Empress's palace just sent a servant, saying that the Empress wants to see you." Chu Qingyan was a little surprised and slightly frowned. Although Xining was still young and usually had a cheerful appearance in front of Chu Qingyan, when it came to dealing with things, she would reveal a calm side, such as now. "Master, although the Empress is still the master of the harem in name, His Highness has said that no one can order you to do anything. Also, you're pregnant now, so it's not suitable for you to go out." To put it bluntly, she was afraid that this Empress Liang had bad intentions. She had failed to harm her in the past, so now she wanted to use the same trick again. But Chu Qingyan had her own considerations. She thought of the conversation with the big ice cube yesterday and her brows straightened and the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. "It's stuffy these days, so it's better to go out and get some fresh air. Tell that servant that I'll be there in an hour." Chapter 1482. On this day, Xiao Ho suddenly woke up, because the little rascal in his dream had suddenly screamed that she was about to give birth. But he woke up. His sweaty palms closed as if he wanted to grab something, but it was in vain. The hangover made his head feel like it was about to explode. He leaned against the bed with difficulty, trying to recall the scene in his dream. The little rascal's lips opened and closed, as well as her moist and painful eyes. Xiao Ho, he couldn't accompany her when she was alive, and now he couldn't bear the pain for her even in her dream. At this moment, Xiao Ho tasted the taste of heart-wrenching pain. So what if he had power? So what if he had money? If he couldn't protect the person he wanted to protect, if he couldn't see the person he wanted to see, fame and fortune, wealth, it was all just a joke. Xiao Ho raised his hand to cover his eyes. covering all the grief, loneliness, and despair. The originally cold and cheerless prince's mansion became lively because of an uninvited guest. I say, third brother, you're too much. I just left and you increased the number of guards. Don't you know that you're disturbing my mood? Xiao fanned himself with all his might, his face full of excitement. Listening to his brother's questioning, Xiao was angry and wronged, but he didn't move. He lightly said, I actually didn't know that climbing walls was second brother's mood. Forgive me for being ignorant. Xiao choked and increased the strength of his fan, as if this was the only way to save his face. You don't know, what I hate the most are the rules of those big houses. When I see someone, I have to inform them one by one. By the time I really see them, it's already too late. So you directly barged into my room without saying a word? Xiao looked at him lightly, but it made the other person's hair stand on end. You can't blame me. Who told your people to stop me? His voice gradually weakened under the other person's faint smile. Xiao lightly coughed a few times and suddenly thought of something. His eyes suspiciously fell on the person in front of him, frowning as he sized him up. Xiao was sipping his tea when he felt his gaze on him. He put down the tea lid and looked back at him. What's the problem? I don't think your condition is very good, Xiao said conservatively. Xiao thought that after being drunk for a night, it was normal for him to be in a bad state. It was abnormal for someone like him to be able to jump over the wall and barge into the residence. However, Xiao's next words stunned him. Third brother, did something happen to you? Xiao remembered hearing the housekeeper say that he hadn't woken up yet. He pushed the door open and wanted to wake him up, but he didn't expect to see that scene. It was like a lonely shadow wandering in the desert, giving up and detesting himself. In that instant he saw depravity and world-weariness in his eyes. This conclusion shocked him, but he was quickly chased out. When third brother came out, he was already as gentle as jade. Xiao originally wanted to brush Xiao off with a few words, but Xiao's sincere concern touched a chord in his heart, and he couldn't help but tell him the reason. You said that you often dream of that Princess Pang recently? And that princess is pregnant but unconscious. Last night, you dreamed that she was about to give birth? Xiao asked a series of question marks. Xiao nodded in tacit agreement. He also didn't know why, when he was feeling more and more carefree recently, little rascal began to appear in his dreams. Moreover, he could clearly feel that as time passed, her belly was getting bigger and bigger, until last night when she was about to give birth. Xiao stroked his chin and looked at Xiao. His eyes turned, and suddenly a plan came to his mind. Do you think it's possible that she gave you a message in your dreams? A message in my dreams? Xiao was slightly stunned. Xiao immediately nodded heavily, and then he seemed to have thought of something. He coughed and asked embarrassedly, Before you guys parted, did you do that? How long has it been? Xiao thought that this brother of his was being naughty again, but he saw him looking at him seriously. His thoughts drifted back to that night, the day after the desperate entanglement, when they were separated by life and death. His heart ached, and under Xiao's urging gaze he suppressed his voice. It's been about 10 months. As he spoke up to hear, Xiao instantly froze. 10 months? Child? Give birth? Xiao clapped his hands. That's right. Maybe she gave birth to a child for you in the underworld. Xiao was a little bewitched. Then I want to go down and accompany her. When these words came out, Xiao almost fell off the chair. He couldn't have been a hindrance, right? He hurriedly drank a mouthful of water to calm his mind, and said to him, Is it possible that she's not dead, so she sent you a message in your dreams? Xiao felt that it was a little ridiculous, but he couldn't help but have some expectations in his heart. But the person we found at the bottom of the cliff that day, are you sure it's her? Although I'm not very clear about what happened that day, are you sure there won't be any problems with so many forces? And the corpse that you found, did you properly identify it? Xiao was afraid that this brother of his would take things too hard and rack his brains to persuade him, so he spouted nonsense with his eyes wide open. However, he didn't know that he had hit the nail on the head. Xiao recovered from his daze. Among the things that Xiao mentioned, he hadn't thought about it before. He recalled that when he found the person that day, because he was too grieving, he only identified her from her clothes, bracelet, and exquisite lock, and neglected other things. Xiao Yao had been carefully observing his brother's expression from the side. At this time, when he saw that his brother was uncertain, he regretted speaking nonsense, but since things had already come to this, he could only continue down this path. Brother, maybe what I said was wrong. The person is really no longer in this world. You have to restrain your grief. But you have to think, why would there be such a thing as a dream? Maybe it's a dream, but it's also possible that the other party is expressing their own thoughts and wants you to live well and not commit suicide at such a young age, don't you think so? At this time, Xiao Ho already couldn't listen to what he said. Second brother, you go back first, I'll entertain you next time. As a result, Xiao Yao was once again magnificently locked out of the prince's residence. The only thing that was better than last time was that this time, he was asked to leave. Why was he so submissive in front of his eldest brother, but when he wanted to come to his third brother's place to seek revenge, he became like this? Could it be that he wasn't suited to deal with these smart people? He couldn't beat them in a fight, he couldn't win in an argument, and he couldn't deceive them. Ah, what a sin! Xiao Yao bit his sleeve in grief and indignation. How did he get these two brothers? However, after Xiao Yao left, Xiao Ho ordered someone to summon Lin Jiangdong. Lin Jiangdong thought that something big had happened, so he hurried over. However, he immediately gave a few orders. Aside from the people who are assisting Imperial Brother, get everyone else to investigate the matter of Xijing falling off the cliff last year. See if there are any suspicious people who appeared, and if there's anything wrong with the people entering and leaving the city. Also, get the coroner to. The words, dig up the grave and conduct an autopsy, were on the tip of his tongue, but he didn't say it out loud. Go and investigate first. If there's anything wrong, report it to me immediately. Lin Jiangdong had never seen his master so anxious. Could it be that he was suspicious about the princess falling off the cliff and dying? Lin Jiangdong didn't dare to delay any longer. He came in a hurry and left in a hurry. Xiao Ho's hands tightly gripped the armrest of the chair. His turbulent emotions were hidden under a layer of calmness. If you're still alive, if you're still alive. Chapter 1483. Before going to Chaiyang Palace, Chu Qingyan had someone send a message to her family's ice cube, informing him of her arrival. Standing once again at the entrance of the palace, which symbolized the highest power in the harem, Chu Qingyan felt as if a lifetime had passed. The last time she remembered was 6 years ago, when she and the ice cube were preparing to travel north. Empress Liang had closed the door and refused to see them. It was also at that time that she saw the ice cube's annihilation of familial love. Now that she stood here, she could still feel the ice cube's disappointment at that time. She lowered her head and stroked her belly. In her heart, she said to the little baby, "Good baby, mother will definitely love you well and won't let you suffer any grievances." Empress Liang had long received the news that Chu Qingyan had come. At this time, the palace gates were wide open, and Chu Qingyan's group entered the main hall unimpeded. Chu Qingyan, who originally had some emotions, immediately choked on her dissatisfaction and complaints when she saw the person sitting at the head of the table. She couldn't say anything. Her hair, which used to be jet black and beautiful, was now as white as snow. Her smooth and rosy skin had lost its luster, and wrinkles covered her entire face. Her rich and noble figure was now emaciated, and even the complicated palace attire couldn't hide her frailness. It had only been a few months since the Sichuan emperor's death, but the incomparably dignified mother of the country had now aged beyond recognition. Chu Qingyan didn't know what had happened during this time, but she knew that the ice cube wouldn't do anything to mistreat his imperial mother. Shock was shock, but Chu Qingyan still immediately bowed, and no one could find fault with it. Qingyan greets Nyang Nyang. May Nyang Nyang have good fortune and safety. Good fortune and safety? Empress Liang didn't miss the shock in Chu Qingyan's eyes. She shook her head with a bitter smile. No matter how high one's power is, there's no way to have good fortune and safety. Luo Yun, take a seat. Chu Qingyan could hear that she wasn't targeting her, so she sat down. Empress Liang's gaze fell on her belly, and her empty eyes regained some spirit. How many months? Almost 7 months. Time really flies. When I was pregnant with Su, it was over 20 years ago. Now, in the blink of an eye, he's going to have his own child. Time really doesn't spare anyone. Empress Liang sighed with emotion, and her words were filled with desolation and sorrow. Before coming here, Chu Qingyan could still figure out the Empress's intentions. However, after chatting for a while, she realized that it was all about the baby. She couldn't guess why the Empress had called her here. Was she purely concerned about her child? Perhaps people would change after experiencing something, but she believed that it wouldn't change a person completely all of a sudden. After chatting for a while, Empress Liang finally revealed her purpose. Chu girl, Su, has a grudge against me and doesn't want to see me. I had no choice but to come up with this plan and have you make a special trip. Empress Liang had always been arrogant. She rarely lowered her head like this and spoke humbly to her. It was hard for Chu Qingyan not to be surprised by this. However, she couldn't forget the suffering that Big Ice Cube had suffered for so many years. Even if Empress Liang expressed goodwill now, she wouldn't be soft-hearted. Empress, if you have something to say, please speak frankly. Empress Liang knew that it was already a blessing to be able to see her, so she didn't expect her to treat her well. She nodded and said, Chu girl, I know that Su won't let the Liang family off, but please say a few words to him. No one who stands in a high position has clean hands. In order to not be dragged down by others, methods have become the foundation of their survival. Empress, as an official, as long as it's for the benefit of the common people, it's forgivable to use some methods. However, Chu Qingyan's gaze became sharp. For their own selfish interests, for their own power and wealth, they use unscrupulous methods to become vermin of the court. They harm the common people and don't care about the people's livelihood. This kind of person doesn't deserve to be an official. Therefore, you don't have to absolve the Liang family. After so many years, you and I are well aware of how many dirty things they've done that harm others for their own benefit. When she and Big Ice Cube had traveled north, they'd punished so many corrupt officials and seen so many people living in poverty. The darkness under the prosperous times she'd experienced was far from what Empress Liang, who was born noble and lived a pampered life, could understand. Empress Liang was choked by her words. Because of the previous orders, the people beside her didn't dare to stand out and scold Chu Qingyan for not respecting her elders and offending her superiors. They could only glare at Chu Qingyan, but they were also shocked by her boldness. Chu Qingyan thought that Empress Liang would fly into a rage from the younger generation's merciless words, but she didn't. After her face paled a little, she recovered her calm. She looked at Chu Qingyan with an unfathomable expression. Little Chu, I don't deny that you're right, but when people hold power in their hands, very few people won't lose themselves. However, today, we don't want to discuss this problem. Empress Liang coughed softly. After recovering from her shock, she continued, the Liang family may have committed too many evil deeds to the point where they can't be eliminated, but they have also done a lot for Su. From the moment Su was born, they have supported him and sought power and benefits for him in places where no one could see. Otherwise, this world would have already become Xiao rants. Even if they didn't make any contributions, they have worked hard. For this reason, can Su show some mercy? Just as Empress Liang finished speaking, she felt an intense gaze that couldn't be ignored locked onto her. She raised her head and met Chu Qingyan's cold and indifferent gaze. She felt that she was being suppressed and couldn't help but be stunned. At such a young age, she already had such an aura. When she was fully grown, how stunning and dazzling would she be? Nyang Nyang, do you think that the Liang family is sincerely helping His Highness and not because of his status? And have you ever treated His Highness with sincerity? Have you treated him as your own flesh and blood and planned a broad path for him instead of using him to obtain more power for the Liang family and to satisfy your own vanity? Chu Qingyan threw one question after another at Empress Liang, causing her face to turn pale, and she was at a loss. She stood up and said coldly to the person at the head of the table, Nyang Nyang, as the master of the inner palace, you should know that the inner palace is not allowed to interfere in politics. Therefore, Empress Liang, Qingyan, is powerless to do what Nyang Nyang has requested. Farewell. She was exonerating the Liang family. She felt that if this was the reason Empress Liang had called her here, then there was nothing that could be said between them. When Xining supported Empress Liang and prepared to leave, she suddenly heard an urgent voice chasing after them from behind. I have some things that can help Su. I can exchange them with you. When these words fell, Chu Qingyan stopped in her tracks and slowly turned around to look at Empress Liang. The delicate woman looked at her against the light, a hint of ridicule appearing in her eyes. Empress Liang's heart was filled with bitterness. She never thought that in the end, she would still use this kind of method. However, she was already at the end of her rope. What else could she ask for? What else could she hope for? Chapter 1484. Chu Qingyan returned to her seat. Regarding the big ice cube, she would never let her guard down. She clasped her hands on her knees and smiled faintly. Nyang Nyang, please point me in the right direction. Chu Qingyan was someone who could stretch and shrink, had an exquisite heart, and was smooth and slick in dealing with people. Empress Liang couldn't help but admire this girl's ability to change her expression. However, she didn't have the time and energy to explore this right now. She raised her hand and made a gesture. Luo Yun led 2 palace maids to Chu Qingyan. The palace maids each held a box in their hands. Chu Qingyan didn't understand what was going on. At this time, Empress Liang spoke. You'll know what's inside once you open the box. At this time, Jasper took the lead and walked out. She couldn't let her master do this kind of thing. If this empress had bad intentions and tampered with the box, then it would be terrible. Empress Liang didn't have any objections to their cautious and careful appearance. Jasper opened the first box and took out an account book. After checking that it wasn't sprinkled with poisonous powder and that there were no problems, she handed it over to her master behind her. Chu Qingyan casually flipped through a few pages. As she reached the end, her expression became more and more serious. Her flipping speed also became faster and faster. When she finally finished flipping, she raised her head. This is the Liang family's property of nearly 100 years. Chu Qingyan looked at the person sitting in the seat with a complicated expression. 100 years of property. It was equivalent to half of the current Sichuan's national treasury. She knew that the Liang family's business was big, but she didn't think it was big to this extent. Empress Liang didn't seem to see the strange expression on her face and continued, the Liang family has 100 years of foundation. They entered the world through martial arts and accumulated illustrious military achievements. Much of the money was awarded by the higher-ups, and some was obtained through some means over the years. On the surface, the Liang family's property has been confiscated, but the hidden wealth is unknown unless it's the few people in charge of the Liang family. However, the Liang family is no longer alive to use these, so give them to Su. Now that he wants to ascend the throne, there are many places where he needs money. Although she was shocked speechless by the huge number of words, Chu Qingyan still maintained her calm on the surface because at this time, Jasper had already gone to open the second box. Because of the foreshadowing before, Chu Qingyan was mentally prepared to face the second box. When she saw Jasper take out an old token, Chu Qingyan didn't underestimate it. Empress Liang's gaze fell on the token in Chu Qingyan's hand. Her gaze changed slightly, and then there was a fluctuation. That token can mobilize a team of secret guards secretly trained by the Liang family. There are a total of 108 people. In the face of Chu Qingyan's doubts, Empress Liang continued, although there aren't many people, each of them is an expert who can fight against 10 people at once. They are not much worse than the fierce cavalry. And these secret guards are the best ones selected from every generation of the Liang family's descendants and given to the Liang family's elders to train. They are best at assassination. Now, there are many treacherous officials who can't be dealt with by national law on the surface, and there will be in the future. They must be dealt with by extreme means, but this can't touch the forces on the surface, not even the fierce cavalry. However, with this token, Su, Uhin mobilized the Liang family's secret guards to carry out these tasks. Don't worry, the Liang family's secret guards only recognize tokens, so you don't have to worry about them betraying their master. Empress Liang answered the question in her heart. Chu Qingyan looked at the heavy things in the box, her gaze very puzzled. Why are you giving them to me? These two are the Liang family's trump cards, the protective talismans that the Liang family has left behind for 100 years. But I know that Su won't care about them, but I also know that he cares a lot about you. And with your feelings for him, you won't watch him give up such an important and convenient path and insist on charging through it himself. He will listen to your words. When she learned that the palace these two people lived in was named after the two of them by Su, she knew how deep the two children's feelings were. If we accept these things but they don't meet your wishes? Chu Qingyan asked with a deep gaze. Empress Liang smiled bitterly. Then we will accept it. On her father's side, she had done her best. Chu Qingyan looked at the two boxes and suddenly felt a chill in her heart. She stroked her stomach and slowly said, "Nyang Nyang, I will tell His Highness your wishes." Light flashed through Empress Liang's gloomy eyes, but before she could be happy, she heard her speak again. "But Nyang Nyang, you have taken another wrong step." Without waiting for Empress Liang to ask, Chu Qingyan continued to speak. "If you took the initiative to offer these two things to atone for your crimes, perhaps His Highness would be lenient on account of the Liang family's many years of achievements. He would also be able to see that you are truly remorseful and make up for your many years of wrongdoing to His Highness. But you chose to exchange. This has a different meaning. It is too cold-blooded and too heartless." Chu Qingyan stood up, and Jasper also put away the two boxes. She stood behind her with Xining. Her gaze swept over the boxes, and then looked at the person whose eyes were already unfocused. Her lips parted slightly. "Nyang Nyang Nyang, you are a qualified daughter, but unfortunately, you are not a qualified mother." Empress Liang stared with wide eyes as Chu Qingyan led her people out of the palace until they disappeared from her sight. "Nyang Nyang, dare I ask, have you ever done anything for His Highness that a mother should do? Have you ever loved him just because of him? Just because of him, not because of his identity as a prince. Love him, protect him, just because of him." Chu Qingyan's words before she left were like the ringing of a bell, ringing loudly in her ears. "Beloved Nyang Nyang Nyang, do you know what a young child is afraid of? What they are most afraid of is living in this world and no one cares about them." Empress Liang completely collapsed in her seat, her fingers trembling as she hugged her trembling shoulders. She shouldn't have vented her hatred on her own flesh and blood because she couldn't obtain the emperor's love. She shouldn't have let him experience the deepest coldness of familial love. She was wrong, completely wrong. But this was all her own doing and she couldn't live. The scars were already there, and they couldn't be erased. Walking out of Chaoyang Palace, Chu Qingyan felt like she had experienced a great battle, and she felt powerless. Even now, Empress Liang still couldn't learn how to love her own child. It was really too sad. Her heart ached for Big Ice Cube. But she couldn't waste time being sad. She had to live well with Big Ice Cube and live through the rest of the days. She quickly walked back with her people. As he stepped onto the stairs, he saw the familiar figure standing below Yen Su Palace, as well as the clear eyes that relaxed after seeing him. Yen Su Palace, her face, his thoughts. He said that she had to walk in front of him so that he could protect her. When she wanted to rely on him, he could hug her in time. She smiled faintly like a flower, lifting her skirt to greet him. Chapter 1485. Seeing the little fellow standing in front of him unharmed, Xiao Su's raised heart finally settled down. He raised a hand to cover her head and softly reprimanded, "Why did you run to Chaoyang Palace on your own? You're already going to be a mother. How can you do things so inappropriately?" Although he was reprimanding her, his voice was filled with doting and reluctance to part, and did not sound stern at all. Chu Qingyan knew that he was doing it for her own good, so she hugged his arm and rubbed against it. I know. It won't happen again, and I've already informed you. Moreover, I'm not a child, I can protect myself no matter what. Also, you have so many people by my side, they're not to be trifled with, so don't worry. She admitted her mistake while explaining herself. She always knew how to deal with him. Xiao Su was not really angry. After she soothed him, he held her hand and walked into the hall. You're the only one who can talk. Why did Imperial Mother look for you? It's about the Liang family. Xiao Su lightly snorted. As expected, Chu Qingyan knew that although the big ice cube did not say it on the surface, he was definitely disappointed in his heart. Empress Liang should have looked for him many times before, but he avoided meeting her. She was afraid that he did not want to experience being abandoned by his family again, so when Empress Liang sent people to find her, she agreed. What she wanted was to solve this problem for the big ice cube. Aren't you going to ask me what I gained? She deliberately pulled his hand mischievously, trying to dissipate the gloominess between his brows. Xiao Su was amused by her childish appearance, and his heart was not as gloomy as before. He pinched her cheeks. You're still so naughty. Tell me, what did you gain? Chu Qingyan slapped away his hand that always liked to pinch her, and gave a look to Jasper. Jasper immediately walked up and presented 2 brocade boxes. Xiao Su had noticed these 2 boxes just now, and thought that they were a reward from Chaoyang Palace. Seeing her expression, there should be something inside. What is it? Xiao Su indicated, and Turin and Hualing came forward to take the boxes. Then they opened them, revealing the 2 things inside. Chu Qingyan patted his hand and said, "Let's go and take a look. You will definitely be shocked." Xiao Su didn't know what was going on. He took the booklet and flipped through a few pages. His eyes suddenly froze. He closed it and smiled coldly. Previously, I felt that the silver in the Liang family's treasury was far from the actual amount that was stolen. I didn't expect it to be here. Of course, Chu Qingyan did not know that Big Ice Cube had already found out. She nodded and said, "A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows." Normally, the richer and more powerful a person is, the better they know how to hide. However, to be able to hide from the fierce Wind Cavalry's intelligence network, it is really impressive. Xiao Su did not comment, and his eyes fell on the token in the second box. Chu Qingyan saw this and immediately repeated Empress Liang's words to him. Xiao Su was expressionless. Until Chu Qingyan finished, he threw the 2 things back into the box. Give the account book to Second Prince and the token to Prince. Let them deal with it. Turin and Hualing did not say anything and left the palace with the things. After giving the order, Xiao Su was in a daze for a while, as if he was thinking about a lot of things, but also as if he wasn't thinking about anything at all. At this moment, a warm and soft feeling appeared in his cold palm. He turned his head and met a pair of understanding eyes. Big Ice Cube, I took these 2 things without your consent. Did I make things difficult for you? Xiao Su held the softness in his hand and smiled. No, don't think too much. You helped me solve the problem by doing this. I should thank you. That's good. She snuggled up to him and leaned her head on his shoulder. She looked like she was clinging to him. The indescribable sense of loss in Xiao Su's heart disappeared after he felt her strong dependence on him. He didn't want to laugh anymore. He was no longer the helpless youth from 10 years ago. Now, he had a sweet burden on his shoulders. He had more warmth than he had in the past. Everything in the past was in the past. He raised his hand and stroked her long hair, enjoying the peace and quiet at this moment. Why did you ask Xiao Yao and Xiao Ho to do these 2 things? Chu Qingyan raised her head from his shoulder. Her big eyes were twinkling. Although she was asking, her eyes were full of playfulness and slyness. The little guy could naturally guess what he was thinking. She just wanted to verify it with him. Xiao Su chuckled. Take a guess. If you guess it, there will be a reward. You want to use this opportunity to train the 2 of them and choose the best successor. She licked her lips and revealed a treacherous smile. Xiao Su tapped her forehead, his eyes full of love. Not bad. Their temperaments are not bad. They can take on heavy responsibilities. It's just that it's a bit difficult for them to be qualified for the position of emperor. Xiao Yao was used to being lazy and lacked some restraints. That was why he had sent him to supervise the construction of the city in order to restrain his temper. This time, he had handed over the Liang family's assets to him for the same purpose. During this period, he would definitely come into contact with many troublesome officials. He would take the opportunity to practice. In the past, Xiao Ho still had some fighting spirit, but after what had happened with Pang Zhijing, his personality had greatly changed. He no longer had any desires, so he had to stimulate the warmonger in him. Moreover, there was another reason, which was that the command medallion would be even more useful in his hands. Big Ice Cube, you're so cunning. If they find out about your true intentions, will they quit? Chu Qingyan propped up her chin. When she imagined Xiao Yao jumping up and down and Xiao Ho's uncertain appearance, she couldn't help but laugh. You didn't come up with this idea? He asked with a smile. At first, she just felt that there were so many princes in the imperial family. It was unreasonable for him to be the only one busy. That was why she wanted to drag the two of them down. Who knew that the big ice block had other ideas? But it will take time to train them. Plus, the court is not stable. So I'm afraid I will have to be the emperor for a while. Xiao Su's fingers tapped on the armrest of the chair. He seemed to have a headache. I can only say that capable people do more work. There were so many people in the world who wanted to sit on the throne, but her big ice block didn't care. As expected, the man she liked was so different. Right? You said that there will be a reward if I guess correctly. What is the reward? The most noble person in the world to warm your bed. Big ice block, you're becoming more and more shameless. Many thanks for the praise, wife. I will work harder in the future. Too bad, too bad. But this was her own fault for spoiling him. So even if she cried, she had to continue spoiling him. Second prince's estate. Xiao Yao thought that he could relax for a few days, but Hualing had brought his royal brother's orders and a box. His lips twitched and he walked into his room in a hopeless manner, muttering to himself, I must still be drunk. No, I have to go sleep. In Prince Yi's estate, Xiao Ho saw the token and cursed shameless in his heart. On the surface, he had to smile and accept it. So angry, but he still had to smile. Chapter 1486. The news of the Liang and Fu families' case being publicly heard by the Chancellor of the Supreme Court had been released early on. On that day, the yamen was filled with commoners, so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Xiao Su brought along Xiao Yao and Xiao Ho to listen to the hearing. The two families were tried separately. The Fu family had committed many evil deeds, and their crimes were too numerous to be recorded. The entire complaint was filled with conclusive evidence, and there was even a confession, so the trial was held in court. The Fu family was investigated, and 9 generations of the family were implicated. The officials who were implicated were also severely punished. The crimes committed by the Liang family were no less than those committed by the Fu family. However, seeing that the Liang family had accomplished many generations of meritorious deeds for Xixin, as well as the fact that they had voluntarily handed over the money they had embezzled, they were spared the death penalty. However, while the death penalty could be spared, they could not escape punishment. They were all exiled to the furthest border. When the officials present announced the verdict, many of the commoners outside shed tears. They had been persecuted by these treacherous people, and today, they finally saw the court give a fair verdict. They could not control themselves, and tears flowed down their faces. They knelt outside and kowtowed in thanks. Long live His Royal Highness. The King of England is wise. Xiao Su also heard the commotion outside, but in his opinion, this was what he should do. How is it, are they here? He asked Xiao Ho beside him. Xiao Ho smiled and nodded. I saw many of them hiding in the crowd. Although I didn't see Xiao Ran, it doesn't make a difference. Our goal has been achieved. Xiao Su nodded. This public trial was to lure the snake out of its hole. After more than half a month of planning, it finally did not go to waste. Xiao Yao shook his head. It seems that we can offend anyone but our eldest brother. No one can compare to his patience in lying in wait. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Yao received a cold glare from his royal brother. He immediately pretended to pull a thread over his mouth. He glanced at Xiao Ho, who was watching the show from the side, and suddenly realized that his third brother's patience was not bad. It seemed that he could not offend either of these two great Buddhas. Otherwise, one day, he would be plotted against so badly that even his pants would be pawned off. In a tea house not far from the Supreme Court, a man wearing a black bamboo hat stood by the window and listened to his subordinate's report. The verdict has just been announced. The execution will take place 3 days later at noon. The man's hand gripped the windowsill, his veins bulging as if he was restraining something. At this moment, the commoners below were cheering for Qiansui thrice. Her chin, which was not covered by the veil, curled up into a mocking smile. He loosened his grip and suppressed his anger. Let's go back first. The group of people shuttled through the bustling crowd and slowly walked towards a secluded mansion. When he stepped into the main hall, the people waiting inside were already impatient. As soon as they saw the man return, they immediately went up to him, grabbed the man's sleeve, and anxiously asked, "How was it?" The woman who greeted him was none other than Consort Yu, who had disappeared for a long time. The man who was being questioned raised his hand and took off his bamboo hat, revealing a handsome and determined face. It was Xiao Ran, whom she had not seen for a long time. He pulled his sleeve out of Consort Yu's hands, walked to the table and put down his bamboo hat. He took the tea from the servant and moistened his throat. Then he turned to Consort Yu, who looked uneasy. The verdict has been announced. Grandfather and his family will be executed at noon 3 days later. There will be no exceptions. When Consort Yu heard the news, although she was mentally prepared, her legs still went weak and she almost fell down. Fortunately, the servant girl beside her caught her. She came back to her senses and angrily pushed the servant away. Her eyes were ferocious as she said, "It is all Xiao Su's fault. He must be the one who wanted to harm the Fu family. Otherwise, this would not have happened." Seeing her angry face, Xiao Ran sighed softly. "Mother, the Fu family brought all of this upon themselves. Even if it was someone else, they would have suffered the same fate." As soon as Imperial Concubine Moon finished speaking, she slapped him across the face. Xiao Ran's face was slapped to the side. He rubbed his burning cheek in a daze and looked at the person in front of him with disbelief. Ever since he was a child, his mother had never hit him like this. However, Consort Yu was so angry that she did not notice the shock on her son's face. She pointed at him angrily and said, "Ranner, do you still have a heart? Those are your family members, your maternal grandfather, your uncles, your cousins. They are all in this state because of you." He opened his mouth and wanted to say that they had become slaves to power and that was why they had brought about their own destruction. However, he knew that saying this at this time would only add fuel to the fire. Therefore, no matter how upset he was, he chose to keep his mouth shut. "Ranner, Mother will ask you one question. Are you going to save them or not?" Consort Yu looked at him with a tense face. Her expression was unprecedentedly terrifying. "Mother, aren't you afraid that this is a trap to lure us out?" Xiao Ran asked with a wooden face. Consort Yu was going crazy. She said angrily, "So what? Our men are all outside the capital. Are you afraid that we can't beat them? Besides, regardless of whether it is a trap or not, your maternal grandfather's family is as important as a mountain to you. Are you going to watch them die without doing anything?" Seeing his mother like this, Xiao Ran felt a lump in his throat. He was unable to say anything. In the end, he seemed to compromise and said, "All right, I will save them." Consort Yu finally relaxed after hearing this. It was also at this time that she seemed to realize that her behavior was too extreme. Looking at his red cheeks, her heart began to hurt again. She said timidly, "Ranner, does it hurt a lot?" Xiao Ran smiled bitterly and shook his head. "It doesn't hurt. I have thick skin." That's good, that's good." It was unclear whether she was saying this to him or to herself. "If there's nothing else, then I will go and make arrangements." Xiao Ran felt that he could no longer calmly stay with her. Consort Yu also knew that her son was feeling uncomfortable. She could only murmur in agreement and watch him disappear through the door. After leaving the main hall, Xiao Ran threw himself against a tree in the courtyard. He struggled to look in the direction of the sun. It was as if he wanted to use the blinding light to stab his eyes and prevent the tears from welling up in his eyes. Why did everything turn out like this? It was like a dream. After waking up from the dream, everything had turned upside down. Xiao Ran closed his eyes and exiled himself in the shadow of the tree. Inside the imperial palace, Xiao Ho stood in front of the table. He raised his hands and bowed. I've already sensed that there are changes inside and outside the capital. Should we take action now? Xiao Yao followed his brother's gaze and looked at the person sitting on the main seat. Xiao Su thought for a moment. His eyes flashed. Pass down the order. In order to prevent any unforeseen events during the execution, no one is allowed to enter or leave the city for the next 2 days. Xiao Ho obeyed. Xiao Su continued, have Wu Lin and his men wait 5 kilometers outside the city. Be prepared to take them in at any time. Xiao Yao gestured from the side. Looks like Xiao Ran won't be able to jump around for much longer this time. Xiao Su and Xiao Ho looked at each other and saw the amusement in each other's eyes. Chapter 1487. When Xiao Su returned to Yen Su Palace, the table was already full of dishes waiting for him. Didn't I say that if it was time, you could eat and not wait for me to come back? Xiao Su quickly walked over and scolded the person who was waiting for him with a smile. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and retorted, you're always getting people to cook this and that for me. I'm not hungry. Furthermore, we're a family. Of course, I have to wait for you to come back before eating. What's wrong with me eating alone? Xiao Su sighed lightly. The little one could always warm his heart with just a few words. He raised a hand to stroke her head. Then I will try to finish my business early in the future and come back. That's the best. She smiled at him obediently. Xiao Su pinched her face before sitting down with her. A while ago, her reaction wasn't very strong, but she couldn't stand the smell of oil or meat. So most of the time, the table was filled with vegetables, radishes, pickled vegetables, and tofu. In order to accompany her, Xiao Su ate whatever she ate during that time, which made her heart ache. But no matter what she said, he wanted to share her joys and sorrows. She remembered that he had said that being pregnant was an extremely difficult matter. He couldn't bear it for her, so he could only accompany her on these small matters. At the time, she had been moved. Thinking about it now, her heart still warmed. So now that she could accept these tastes, she had the imperial kitchen prepare all kinds of delicious food to make up for the nutrition that the big ice cube had lacked. He hadn't even ascended the throne yet, so she couldn't let people think that she had embezzled her family's big ice cube's rations. She would make the big ice cube carry the reputation of being henpecked. Recently, her body had become a bit heavy, but the little one was not as tired as she had been in the past few months. Seeing her in high spirits every day, Xiao Su's mood was also very good. Even the ministers who worked with him could clearly feel that the Lord's temper had improved. Originally, the Lord was like a moving ice cube. If he was still unhappy, then they would be frozen into ice. They rejoiced that the little Wang Fei was here. They wanted to kowtow in thanks. Of course, Chu Qingyan didn't know about this. The Fu family is going to be executed tomorrow. Will Xiao Ran really show up? I think he should be able to tell that this is a trap. Chu Qingyan took a bite of the sweet and sour pork ribs he handed over and raised her head to ask. Xiao Su wiped the stain on the corner of her mouth and said unhurriedly, it's not up to him. Even if he doesn't show up, his whereabouts have been exposed. It's only a matter of time before he's arrested. You don't have to worry. Chu Qingyan sighed faintly. In the end, it still came to this step. I'd rather he stay away from the imperial court, stay away from the Sichuan, go far away and never come back. Xiao Ran was at fault, but none of this was caused by him. It could be said that he had unknowingly become someone's accomplice. It's very difficult. Don't forget that he still has Consort Yu by his side. Even though so many things have happened, there are still some things about him that haven't changed. For example, he is easily swayed. Xiao Su shook his head. Chu Qingyan thought of Consort Yu, who had exposed her ambitions in front of the emperor's couch. She had to admit that Xiao Ran was well protected by her. At the same time, he had become the sharp sword in her hand. It was his misfortune and sorrow to have met such a mother. Seeing the little fellow's thoughtful expression, Xiao Su patted her hand and comforted her. We are just dust floating in the world. We can't interfere with other people's lives, and we can't change them. Chu Qingyan nodded. Xiao Ran had brought this upon himself. Even if they used to be friends, they couldn't help him. The night was very quiet. Xiao Ran stood in the courtyard. Tomorrow would be the day of the execution, but at this moment, his heart was incomparably calm. Consort Yu was still worried, so under the guidance of a servant, she came to find him. What she saw was him staring blankly at the moon. Imperial concubine Moon walked up. At this time, the person under the tree sensed that someone had arrived. He turned around and their gazes collided in midair. It's so late. Imperial Mother, are you still not going to rest? Xiao Ran gathered his emotions and smiled with concern. Consort Yu sighed. Imperial Mother can't sleep. I'm a bit worried about tomorrow. Xiao Ran smiled indifferently. Imperial Mother doesn't need to worry. I have already prepared a foolproof plan. Consort Yu was still a bit worried. She wanted to say something, but she saw her son's eyes turn cold and distant. Her heart thumped and the smile on her face stiffened. Ranner, are you dissatisfied with Imperial Mother? Xiao Ran shook his head. I don't dare. Don't dare? Then you are. Consort Yu wasn't stupid. She knew that he was dissatisfied with her forcing him to do things at this stage. Is there anything that can't be said between the two of us? Imperial Mother can see that you have something on your mind recently. Xiao Ran looked deeply at the person in front of him, the person closest to him in the world. Imperial Mother, there are some words that I have been hiding in my heart for a long time, but I haven't found a chance to say them. Consort Yu was stunned. Then she said, say it. Imperial Mother will listen. Has Imperial Mother ever regretted walking to this day? Xiao Ran looked into her eyes as he asked. Regret? That's right. To this day, I feel that we seem to have done a lot of things wrong. Consort Yu's smile disappeared when she heard this. Her voice was a bit unhappy. Ranner, what nonsense are you saying? How could we have done anything wrong? Isn't that right? Xiao Ran smiled weakly. Our family of 3 is living well. Why do we have to do these things to seize power? We've never been mistreated, have we? Those 2 words pierced the deepest part of Consort Yu's heart. She screamed, what do you know? The weak are prey to the strong in this world. If you don't have power, you'll be eaten alive by others sooner or later. If you don't fight for it, you'll be trampled under others' feet. Only when you have power and stand at the top can you live as you wish and live without worries. So for your own selfish desires, you can even hurt the people closest to you? Xiao Ho felt as if the blood in his body was about to freeze, but it couldn't stop the pain in his heart from deepening. Consort Yu was a bit stunned. She forced a smile and tried to cover it up. Ranner, what are you talking about? Why can't Imperial Mother understand a single word? Xiao Ran's lips curled into a mocking smile. The moonlight fell on him, making him appear very cold. No, Imperial Mother. I knows that you can understand. You know better than anyone else what I's talking about. Consort Yu looked at him in disbelief. Could it be that you know everything? I sent people into the palace to investigate after you got into trouble. So, he closed his eyes and said in a pained voice, I knew everything that happened in Imperial Father's bedroom. Consort Yu stiffened and took a few steps back. She looked at him with embarrassment and murmured, then why didn't you expose me back then? Chapter 1488. Xiao Ran opened his eyes. There were tears in his eyes, and they were filled with immense pain. Because you are my consort mother. She was his consort mother who loved and cared for him the most since he was young. But my most beloved consort mother killed my most respected imperial father with her own hands. Consort mother, do you know how I felt at that time? When he found out the truth, his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. What kind of earth-shattering feeling was that? What kind of despair and pain? When Xiao Ran said these words, Consort Yu was already choking with sobs. It wasn't that she didn't regret it, it wasn't that she didn't hate it, and it wasn't that she didn't feel pain. But compared to her own greed, she didn't think she was wrong. Ranner, consort mother did everything for you. However, when consort Yu finished speaking, she was cut off by Xiao Ran. His eyes were filled with even more disappointment and pain. He slowly shook his head. No, for me is just an excuse. He wanted to say something else, but he already felt that everything was meaningless. He turned around and didn't look at the person behind him. His voice was hoarse, but his tone was very calm. It was like nothing had happened. He was polite and distant. You can go back. I'll personally go save grandfather tomorrow, so don't worry. Consort Yu was about to collapse, but she knew that this was not the best time to talk. Even if she had 1,000 words in her heart, she could only hold them in. In a daze, she felt like the sun in front of her was getting farther and farther away from her. All right, we can talk after we save your grandfather and the others. Rest well, consort mother will go back first. Consort Yu swayed as she turned around to leave. Tonight's unpleasant conversation had come to an end. The sound of footsteps slowly faded away, but it felt like each step was stepping on his heart. Every step was filled with pain. Xiao Yao leaned his body against a tree. He had no strength left. Qingyan, you're right. A person's greed is endless. If you can't guard your heart, you'll be dragged into the abyss by those evil thoughts and never be able to return. He muttered as his eyes gradually lost focus. It was the end of winter and the beginning of spring. The snow gradually melted and the weather became colder. However, the cold weather couldn't stop people from wanting to watch the show. It wasn't noon yet, but the place where the execution would be carried out was already filled with citizens. They were all filled with righteous indignation and excitement. The execution official was Xiao Yao. He impatiently gathered his clothes. He couldn't be blamed for being in the limelight recently. It was his big brother who cared about the opposite sex. However, he was too spineless. Every time eldest imperial brother glanced at him, he would eagerly accept the task. Not far from the execution platform, a few figures stood on the roof. They used the raised eaves to cover their tracks. Your Highness, it's better if you don't go. Let your subordinates save the people. One of the subordinates advised in a low voice. Xiao Ran waved his hand. I've made up my mind. Then, Your Highness, why don't you prepare an arrow formation? There are so many citizens. Those people must be busy taking care of the citizens' lives. It'll be more convenient for us to save the people. Xiao Ran's expression darkened. No need to say more. Once they appear, we'll act according to the plan. The subordinates didn't dare to say anything. They quietly waited for the situation to change. Xiao Yao was used to being lazy. He didn't stand or sit properly. The officials sitting next to him also didn't dare to say anything. Who didn't know how many things the two princes had done to help His Royal Highness? Brothers working together was a great blessing for a country. Therefore, these small problems were much more pleasing to the eye. Thus, the officials looked down and turned a blind eye. Xiao Yao stroked his chin. His eyes intentionally or unintentionally swept across the crowd. When he saw a familiar figure appear among the citizens, even if it was disguised, it couldn't hide the brilliance of the whole body. He couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. It can't be, even third brother came? Xiao Ho sensed his gaze and looked over. He nodded at him and then paid attention to the surrounding movements. Xiao Yao was rolling in joy in his heart. It seemed that he wasn't alone on this mission. Originally, he had complained that his eldest brother was biased and only sent him alone. Now, his heart felt better. Share blessings and share troubles. Not bad, not bad. There was a commotion in the crowd. Xiao Yao's gaze became serious, sweeping away his sloppy appearance. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the prisoners brought in by the Yamen runners. The right prime minister, who used to be second only to one person, was now dejected. He was no longer glorious. The prisoner's uniform drooped on his body and fell into the dust. The others followed behind him. They were no longer in high spirits. There was only despair and the fear of death. Xiao Yao sighed and shook his head. The officials beside him wanted to please him. They bent over and asked with a smile, Your Highness, what are you thinking about? If you don't do it, you won't die. The officials immediately straightened their backs and pretended that they didn't hear anything. Xiao Yao laughed lowly. He felt a sense of pleasure from teasing someone. However, when he raised his head, he met third brother's disapproving gaze, indicating that he should do his job properly. Xiao Yao didn't feel embarrassed at all when he was caught red-handed doing something bad. Instead, he smiled even more brilliantly. If you're not convinced, come and bite me. Xiao Ho didn't want to bicker with his childish brother. He paid more attention to his surroundings because he knew that Xiao Ran had already arrived and was hiding in the surroundings. When the prisoners knelt down, there was still some time before the execution. The commoners threw the prepared rotten eggs and vegetables at the prisoners, smashing them fiercely on their bodies. Dog officials. Retribution. Heaven has eyes. Good and evil will be repaid in the end. It wasn't that it wasn't time yet. Xiao Ho looked away and swept his gaze elsewhere. At this time, there was movement in the crowd. The assassins hidden among the commoners pulled out their weapons and quickly passed through the crowd, heading straight for the guards on the periphery. Dozens of black shadows flew down from the eaves not far away. They headed straight for the execution platform. In an instant, there were flashes of swords and screams. Although the change happened in the blink of an eye, Xiao Yao, who was already prepared, chuckled. He waved his hand and the people hidden in the shadows immediately surged forward. They evacuated the commoners and attacked the assassins. The scene was chaotic. There were sounds of fighting. Xiao Yao sat majestically on the execution platform. He calmly looked down at the people who were fighting fiercely. The officials had a whole new level of respect for him. The second prince was so calm, so cool. Xiao Yao was roaring in his heart. He really wanted to go down and fight. He really wanted to, but Imperial Brother didn't allow it. He didn't allow it. I want to fight. Chapter 1489. At this time, a figure landed on the execution platform. His aura and elegance were different from the other assassins. He was masked, only revealing a pair of calm eyes. He held a long sword in his hand and his gaze fell on the prisoner on the platform. Grandfather, Ranner is here to save you. Ranner, this is a trap. Leave quickly. The right Prime Minister was surprised and happy, but then he reacted and immediately shouted at him. Xiao Ran sighed in his heart. He knew. There was one more person on the execution platform. Xiao Ho. His expression was gentle, and he held a sword in his hand. It made the elegant young master look more elegant and confident. Since you're here, why don't you show your true face, my good fourth brother? Xiao Ran lifted his hand and took off his mask. He smiled lightly. Long time no see, third brother. Long time no see. I didn't expect to meet you again in such a situation. I'm very sorry. Xiao Ho smiled warmly, as if he was really welcoming his younger brother who had not returned for a long time. Xiao Ran chuckled. That's right. The past is like smoke. If I hadn't experienced so many things, I wouldn't have been able to see what kind of person third brother is. Oh? Then you can see what kind of person I am? Xiao Ho seemed to be asking seriously. Xiao Ran frowned slightly, as if he was thinking. You hide deep and are a gentle knife. This evaluation sounds better than sinister and cunning. Thank you, fourth brother, for giving me face. Xiao Ho smiled faintly. Is that so? Xiao Ran chuckled. Big brother once said that if you want to identify a person, you can't use your eyes and ears. But time will tell you the answer. Xiao Ho was like a good brother who was preaching, sincerely exhorting. Xiao Ran cupped his hands. I've learned. Brothers, back and forth, smiling warmly, but there was a knife hidden in their smiles. They had already fought several times. Don't give me this empty talk. Do you still want to fight? If not, I'm going home to eat. After a busy day, he was almost starving to death. I haven't had my breakfast yet. A grumbling voice interrupted. The two of them looked over at the same time. Xiao Yao was twisting his neck and swinging his waist, glaring at the two of them with a grumbling expression. Xiao Ho looked at the chaos around him and smiled. Fourth brother, shall we spar? I'll do as you say. Xiao Ran calmly replied. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Yao saw the shadows of swords and sabers on the execution platform. The figures of the two seemed to have disappeared in the light and shadow. He could only see one black and one white intertwined. He rubbed his eyes. These two people's martial arts were really high. He estimated that they would fight for a while. Forget it, he would go home for dinner later. Thus, he covered his face with a blanket and fell into a deep sleep. The officials at the side. At this stage, Xiao Ran's mind was too exhausted, and there were too many things on his mind. As he fought, he felt a little powerless. When the two of them were fighting, Xiao Ho could tell that Xiao Yao was not in a good state. He was not using his full strength and was holding back. In fact, in his opinion, Xiao Ran had improved over the years. His swordsmanship had improved a lot, and his temperament had also stabilized. As an older brother, he was gratified. However, he felt that he owed this younger brother of his. In that psychological battle, he did play a role in adding fuel to the fire. He should also take part of the responsibility for Xiao Ran's current state. Xiao Ran was the most passive in this game, but no one was innocent. After feeling the silent concern of his eldest brother and second brother, Xiao Ho had a new definition of the word brother. At this time, he felt guilty toward Xiao Ran. However, this guilt should not be used at this time. He could clearly distinguish between public and private matters. Xiao Ran's sword was knocked out of his hand. His fingers trembled slightly before he finally retracted them. He looked at Xiao Ho. His gaze pierced through the sunlight and was somewhat dazzling. He felt a little pain in his heart, but it still fell back to its original position. I lost. Admit it. Noon arrived just in time. The guards who were waiting at the side rushed forward and restrained Xiao Ran. At this time, someone brought a metal chain and prepared to lock him up. Xiao Ho raised his hand to stop them. No need. Send the fourth prince away. Since he was already prepared to die, he would not run away. Xiao Ran looked at him with a genuine smile in his eyes. Thank you for allowing me to retain my last shred of dignity. When he was taken away, the other black-clothed men were also subdued. The guards were cleaning up the execution platform. When there was no more movement, Xiao Yao grabbed the paper covering his face and jumped up. He stretched and said to everyone, "It's already past noon. Take him back to the prison and wait for His Royal Highness to deal with him." After this incident, no one had any objections. They all obeyed the order. As far as the eye could see, it was a complete mess. Xiao Yao would never admit that he was the most eye-catching among all of them. Thus, Xiao Yao strolled over and raised his eyebrows at the person who was putting away the sword. "Third brother, why are you here?" Xiao Ho handed the sword to the subordinate behind him and said innocently, "I'm afraid that you'll mess things up." Xiao Yao was speechless. Was he that unreliable? Xiao Ho chuckled and turned around. If he was not worried about Xiao Yao's safety, he would not have come. Xiao Yao rubbed his chin. You don't mean what you say. But this brother is really something. I'm going back to eat. I'll leave this mess to you guys to clean up." With that, he strode forward and caught up with the person in front of him. He hooked his arm around the person's shoulder and laughed loudly, leaving the dumbfounded crowd behind. Unfortunately, Xiao Yao's wish to go back to eat was once again dashed. This was because Turin appeared in front of them and bowed to invite them into the palace. Thus, Xiao Yao once again cried out in grief. An hour later, the two brothers stood in front of the imperial study and reported the day's situation. After hearing that Xiao Ran had been executed, Xiao Su's eyes moved slightly, but he eventually regained his composure. It seems that this matter can come to an end. Xiao Ho nodded. From the looks of it, as long as the remnants are all cleaned up. Xiao Su agreed. Then, he said, "You guys have worked hard. It doesn't matter if it's hard or not. The point is that I haven't even eaten breakfast and lunch." Xiao Yao rubbed his stomach and looked at him sadly. Xiao Su could not help but smile. He rubbed his brows and said, "You only know how to eat. The imperial kitchen has already prepared a table of good wine and dishes. You guys can go." Xiao Ho really did not want to be associated with this good-for-nothing brother of his. But since his imperial brother had already spoken, he could only reluctantly eat with him. After the two of them left, they brushed past Wu Lin, who entered the palace. The latter bowed to the two of them before entering. Xiao poked the person beside him and asked, "Now that Wu Lin has returned, does it mean that Fourth Brother's troops outside the city have been successfully taken down?" "I don't know either, but it should be close," Xiao said truthfully. Xiao rubbed his chin and looked puzzled. If it's true, Wu Lin's efficiency is too fast. Xiao was slightly stunned. Then he chuckled. Maybe the other party did not even think of resisting. "Third brother, what do you mean? Why do I feel like I'm confused?" Xiao could not understand. Unfortunately, when he turned his head, Wu Lin was already far away from him. He cursed in his heart and immediately chased after him. Chapter 1490. The two of them joked around as they walked into a palace. Of course, it should be said that Xiao was the one who was joking around. When the two of them entered the palace, the first thing Xiao saw was a table full of exquisite dishes, and he almost pounced on them. Xiao, on the other hand, saw his imperial sister-in-law, Chu Qingyan, sitting at the side with a smile on her face. Xiao stopped Xiao, whose eyes were only filled with dishes, and bowed towards her. This subject brother pays his respects to imperial sister-in-law. Xiao also saw his sister-in-law, who was as beautiful as a flower, and inwardly scolded himself for not having good eyesight. He almost embarrassed himself, but he also quickly smiled and bowed. This subject brother pays his respects to imperial sister-in-law. Chu Qingyan smiled. "We're all family, so there's no need to be so polite. Come and sit. Your imperial brother still has matters to attend to, so let's eat first." The two brothers looked at each other. They didn't expect that this meal wasn't for them, but for the eldest brother and his wife. It looked more like a family feast. The two of them were delighted and sat down naturally. Speaking of which, this is the first time we're eating at the same table. Without those annoying people around, the feeling is really different. Xiao was someone who didn't care about trifles. Since they were all family, he didn't restrict himself and did as he pleased. As he spoke, he filled his brother's cup with wine and poured tea for his sister-in-law. After all, she was pregnant, and drinking wine was harmful to the baby. Chu Qingyan liked Xiao's personality very much. She raised her cup and toasted the two of them. "During this period of time, your imperial brother has enslaved you quite a bit. I know it's been hard on you. Today, I'll take care of your food, drink, and accommodation. Eat to your heart's content. Aren't you afraid of going broke from eating? Imperial sister-in-law is still the best." These words make this subject brother feel at ease. The hardships of these days are worth it. Xiao was delighted. Xiao was also amused by Chu Qingyan's words. "Thank you for your hospitality, imperial sister-in-law." The three of them clinked their cups. "Oh right, imperial sister-in-law, you're already pregnant with my little nephew. Did imperial brother say when the wedding will be held?" Xiao shouted, speaking whatever was on his mind. However, Xiao looked at him disapprovingly and stuffed a drumstick into his mouth. "Eat your food. Stop talking nonsense." Chu Qingyan giggled. She knew that Xiao thought that Xiao had violated a taboo, so he stopped him like this. Xiao also knew that he had misspoken, so he quickly gnawed on the drumstick. She waved her hand carelessly and said, "As a family, there's no need to be so afraid of everything. It's because your imperial brother hasn't sorted out the matters of the imperial court yet, and he hasn't ascended the throne yet. It's also a bit difficult for me to hold a wedding while I'm pregnant, so after some discussion, we decided to simply wait for him to register before holding the wedding. At that time, I may have to trouble the two of you to help." Xiao nodded. "If there's anything we can help with, please don't hesitate to ask, royal sister-in-law." Chu Qingyan smiled. "All right, sister-in-law, please don't stand on ceremony." "Of course." After 3 rounds of wine, Xiao finally arrived. Those who are late will have to punish themselves with 3 cups of wine. Xiao had drunk some wine, so his temper was completely unrestrained. He didn't treat this imperial brother of his as respectfully as he usually did, so he immediately handed over a cup. Xiao Su was also straightforward, downing the 3 cups in one gulp. Xiao Ho smiled satisfactorily at the side. Delightful. Today, let's not talk about official matters. Let's just talk about romance. Xiao Yao stood up. His face was slightly red, and his eyes were shining. He seemed to be in high spirits. Everyone agreed. All right, then I'll talk about some of the interesting things that I've encountered in the past few years. Xiao Yao placed his chopsticks on the table and began to tell his story. I'll have to start from 3 years ago. On that dark and windy day, it was the time to kill and rob. I was riding on a horse alone on a narrow, winding path. Xiao Yao was talking about the time he met a bandit on the road. He described the bandit in a very exaggerated manner, then highlighted how he had handsomely beaten the bandit into a sorry state, and how he had finally swaggered off heroically. Although the content of the story was very simple, it couldn't withstand this idiot's lively narration. It was very lively, and everyone couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Yao felt a great sense of accomplishment, so he continued to tell one story after another. What everyone cared about was not the content, but the simple warmth at this moment. Come, everything is in the wine. The lively atmosphere didn't dissipate for a long time. The sound of laughter could be heard outside the palace, and it gave this cold palace a hint of human warmth. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a little touched. In the past, it was always the big ice cube that shouldered those matters alone. Now that there were brothers working together, she really couldn't help but want to cry. After sending off the 2 brothers, Xiao Su turned around and hugged her, asking with concern, "What's wrong?" After being together for so long, he could acutely sense any fluctuation in her emotions. Chu Qingyan looked up at him with teary eyes. "In the past, you were alone. Now, there are so many people accompanying you. I'm so happy." Xiao Su was slightly startled, then hugged her even tighter. His voice was moved. "Yes, how lucky I am to have waited until today. We have to be good in the future." Chu Qingyan hugged him tightly and said softly. Xiao Ho and Xiao Yao didn't want to stay in the palace that was full of unhappy memories, so they walked out of the palace door with their arms around each other's shoulders. "How about drinking at my house?" Xiao Yao suggested with a bright smile. Xiao Ho glanced at him. "You drank so much tonight, and you still haven't had enough?" Xiao Yao said aggrievedly and innocently. Royal sister-in-law was there. Royal brother was worried that I would go crazy after drinking too much, saying that it would affect the prenatal education. In the end, he didn't let anyone serve me any wine. I didn't have any fun drinking at all. At that time, Xiao Ho was talking to Chu Qingyan and didn't notice this. When he heard this, he raised his eyebrows and looked at him. This guy had drunk a lot, and he still wanted to drink more? Xiao Yao thought that he had persuaded him, so he continued, "Do you still remember the grape wine last time? I'm still reluctant to drink the last jar. How about we finish it today? Look at how good Big Brother is to you." Xiao Ho glanced at him, then unhurriedly removed his hand from his shoulder. He shook his clothes and smoothed out the creases on his sleeves, then slowly said, "I've told you before, Imperial Brother once gave me 10 jars of grape wine." Xiao Yao was dumbfounded. Xiao Ho casually threw him a sentence. "I saw that you were too happy last time, so I couldn't bear to say it to hurt you." Xiao Yao reacted and said through gritted teeth, "You black-hearted person. You didn't have to say it. To think that I was so good to you." Xiao Ho shrugged. The truth is always cruel. When Xiao Ho turned around, Xiao Yao bared his fangs and brandished his claws at his back. He muttered, "Both of them are sly foxes. It's a pity that a big white sheep like me was fooled by them. I really lost both myself and the wine." Sob sob, baby's heart is bitter, but baby won't say it. When Xiao Ho heard the words that he deliberately said to himself, the corners of his mouth turned up, revealing his good mood. He said, "Let's go to my house to drink." The person who was muttering stopped, turned around, and immediately chased after him. "Wait for me." It was the same for Xiao Ho and Xiao Yao. They were no longer alone. Yes, it was dark and windy at night, and it was time to drink. Chapter 1491. At the lowest level of the imperial prison, on the spacious path, one could almost hear the sound of the cold wind blowing. Xiao Ran sat in the only cell. As far as his eyes could see, there was a clean and tidy bed, exquisite pastries on the table, and hot tea. As a prisoner, to be able to receive such treatment, it had to be said that the superior was benevolent. This was his eldest brother. Although he did not recognize him and did not treat him well, he had never treated him cruelly. A layer of guilt filled his heart. His eyes were slightly red. Before he could think of anything else, he heard footsteps from afar. In this quiet space, it was very abrupt. He knew who had come. When he was young, every time he heard these familiar footsteps, he would be very happy. Because the eldest brother he admired the most had come. The chains clanged and the cell door was opened. Xiao Su's figure appeared in front of him. "Long time no see, eldest brother." He tried to raise the corner of his mouth, revealing a sincere smile of reunion after a long separation. The person in front of him was down and out, but he didn't appear to be in a difficult situation. He was in a difficult situation, but he didn't appear to be dispirited. Only then did Xiao Su's expression soften. He stepped into the cell and sat down in front of him. Xiao Ran smiled and sat down in front of him. He poured him a cup of tea. "In here, there's nothing to entertain. Imperial brother, please bear with it." "No harm." Xiao Su took the teacup. He did not even frown as he drank a mouthful before putting it down. Seeing him treat him so unguarded, not suspecting whether he had poisoned him or not, Xiao Ran found a long-lost warmth. He shook his hands and drank a mouthful of hot tea before putting the cup down. "Imperial brother, if there's anything you want to know, I can tell you." This sentence was a disguised admission of weakness. Compared to being interrogated by torture, he was more willing to tell his imperial brother everything. Xiao Su looked at him deeply and asked an unimportant question. "Why did you bring so few people with you when you raided the execution site yesterday? With your ability, you wouldn't have been defeated so easily. Didn't you stop them outside the city?" Xiao Ran blinked. "I want to hear the truth," Xiao Su said calmly. Xiao Ran choked and finally gave up struggling. He said in a low voice, "I know this is a trap set by my brother. No matter how many people come, it will be useless. So in order to avoid too many casualties and to avoid hurting the people, that's why." He seemed to have thought of something and paused for a moment before continuing. "Imperial brother, you said that we don't have the right to trample on other people's lives. In the past, I was ignorant and did many wrong things. I didn't care about the lives of the people. I won't be so foolish again." "I'm glad that you think that way." Xiao Su originally thought that he would see Xiao Ran, who was covered in thorns like before, but he didn't expect him to change so much. He raised his eyebrows slightly. He still remembered that before they parted, Xiao Ran's hostility was very strong. He didn't know what Xiao Ran had experienced during their parting that caused such a big change. However, Xiao Su was still very satisfied to see him admit his mistake. "I'm very happy that my brother can come to see me." He was really very happy. Xiao Su saw that his eyes were red and sighed softly. "Useless. Yes, I'm useless. Growing up, I can't tell right from wrong, good from evil. All the books that I've read have been eaten by dogs." He rubbed his eyes and smiled, but he choked with sobs. Xiao Su looked at his pained expression and pursed his lips. In the end, he couldn't bear it. He raised his hand and placed it on Xiao Ran's head. His voice was no longer so stern. "You did wrong, but you shouldn't bear all the responsibility for all of this. An elder brother is like a father. I didn't teach you well." That warm and familiar heat on his head made Xiao Ran's uneasy heart finally collapse. He covered his face with both hands, his shoulders trembling. At this moment, tears welled up in his eyes. He didn't need to hold back anymore. A man doesn't cry easily, only when he's deeply hurt. Xiao Su couldn't help but sigh deeply at Xiao Ran's suppressed sobs. His hand moved to Xiao Ran's back and gently patted him like how he usually comforted the little guy. After venting, Xiao Ran felt that the big stone in his heart had finally disappeared. He said with tears in his eyes, "Brother, I didn't keep my original heart. My original heart was destroyed. In the end, I became the kind of person that I hate. He learned so many skills, but in the end, he turned his sword against his family and friends. He betrayed them, and in the end, he was betrayed by everyone. He deserved it. Facing this younger brother that he had personally brought up, Xiao Su's feelings were also complicated. No one knew that things would end up like this. Hearing Xiao Ran's sincere repentance, his heart was also moved. He patted Xiao Ran's head. It's all in the past. It's great that you know your mistakes and can change. However, these words didn't stop Xiao Ran from mourning. Instead, it allowed him to vent freely. Xiao Su quietly accompanied him like this. After a while, Xiao Ran sorted out his emotions. He knew that crying at this age was especially embarrassing. He used his sleeve to casually wipe his eyes, then raised his head. "Brother, how do you plan to deal with me?" Xiao Su withdrew his hand. "If I let you return to the imperial court, it'll be difficult to explain to the officials and the common people. I'll first give you a fief. You can settle down there and live your life." Xiao Ran's eyes trembled when he heard this. "Brother, you're still so soft-hearted." "No matter what happens, the blood in my body can't be cut off," Xiao Su said indifferently. Xiao Ran shook his head, but didn't want to discuss this topic. He was silent for a while. After hesitating for a while, he finally gathered his courage and asked, "I heard that Qingyan is pregnant. Is she doing well?" Before Xiao Su could answer, Xiao Ran hurriedly explained, "I don't mean anything else. I'm just asking." Xiao Su's gaze lingered on him for a while before he said, "She's doing very well now. The child is also doing very well." Hearing this, Xiao Ran sighed in relief. Then he cautiously said, "Brother, can I see her? I promise I'll speak to her from afar." Towards the end, his voice gradually became softer. Only when one truly cared would one become petty and low. Xiao Su could empathize with this feeling because he had experienced it before. "Do you have anything else you want to say?" Xiao Ran thought that he didn't want him to see Qingyan. He knew that he didn't have the right to ask for anything else, and he didn't have the face to see her. His voice instantly fell. With that, he heard the sound of his brother standing up. He couldn't help but lower his head even more. He already didn't have the face to see him in this life. Xiao Su walked to the door and said, "I'll pass on your words to Ian. Take care of yourself." With that, he heard the door close and the sound of footsteps gradually fading away. Xiao Ran looked up in shock. His gaze passed through the wooden cell and looked at the upright and imposing figure. Tears quickly gathered in his eyes. "My brother, my dearest brother, even now, you're still willing to tolerate me. I really, really regret it." Drip, tears fell. Chapter 1492. When Xiao Su entered the hall, Chu Qingyan was inspecting the baby's clothes, hat, and socks that she had just sewn. When she saw him enter, she immediately waved at him. "Come over and take a look. Aren't the baby's clothes cute?" The little fellow's warm and soft brows and big bright eyes immediately dispelled the coldness he brought out from the dungeon. He walked up and took the small clothes she handed over. It was so small that it couldn't even cover his hands completely. He felt that it was extremely novel. "Will the baby be able to wear it?" he asked foolishly. It was rare to see her big ice block being so silly. It really proved the saying that a smart person can be stupid for a while. However, she wouldn't dampen his enthusiasm. She pointed at the clothes in his hands and explained patiently, "The baby weighs a few kilograms when he's just born. This size is enough for him to wear. Some babies are born prematurely or malnourished in the womb, so it's not surprising." Xiao Su's expression immediately became serious when he heard that. His gaze was fixed on the little fellow's bulging belly that was half a ball. Chu Qingyan noticed that something was wrong with him after folding a few clothes. She patted his hand and asked, "What's wrong?" He said nervously, "I'm worried that the baby will be malnourished. It seems like I have to call the Imperial Kitchen's chef over and remind him." Also, ethereal sighed. Before Xiao Su could finish, his mouth was covered by a soft hand. He looked at her in confusion and innocence. He didn't say anything wrong. The little fellow rolled her eyes at him and said, You basically have to call the imperial chefs over a few times every day to remind them. Now, you've made everyone in the imperial kitchen nervous, and their legs turn to jelly whenever they see you. You should stop tormenting them and let them cook for me in peace. Also, ethereal side, don't be so paranoid every time there's something wrong. Last time, I ate too much last time and didn't have an appetite for the next meal, so you dragged her over. Now, as soon as she left, you dragged her over again because the baby kicked me. You should know that Ethereal has lost a lot of weight today, and I've gained a lot of weight. Just thinking about it makes me feel sorry for her. She reprimanded him for a long time before letting go and freeing him. So, don't worry. Don't worry. Let nature take its course. She thought that he would repent after saying so much. She did not expect him to say something like this. Alright, then I'll reduce the number of times I look for the royal chef. 3 times a day will do. After all, I need to know what you want to eat for every meal. Regarding Ethereal, it's true that I didn't consider everything, but checking your pulse once a day is inevitable. However, if there's nothing else, I won't summon him. If Ethereal were here, he would be crying tears of joy on the inside. How would he know what it meant to be okay? The little princess burped. She ate too little for this meal and couldn't sleep. Her legs were cramping. Master, you will think that the sky is falling down. Baby's heart is bitter. Chu Qingyan sighed deeply in her heart. It seemed that nothing she said could change the ice cube. She could only wait for the baby to be born, and then everyone would be free. Therefore, those who were innocently affected would have to suffer for a few more months. Chu Qingyan observed a moment of silence for them in her heart. At this time, Chu Qingyan changed the topic and did not bicker with him. She found a new topic. I remember that you didn't have anything to do this morning. Why did you take so long to come back? Xiao Su's mind was still on the baby's nutrition. Hearing this, he was stunned. Then he recalled the person he saw 2 hours ago. His heart stirred. He reached out to take her hand and briefly told her what he had discussed with Xiao Ran in the prison. Finally, he passed on Xiao Ran's request. If you want to see him, I'll send someone to arrange it. When she heard that Xiao Ran had already repented, Chu Qingyan still felt a bit resentful that he did not live up to her expectations. This silly child. Xiao Su stroked her head. After taking a deep breath, Chu Qingyan tilted her head and looked at him. Her gaze was subtle and unblinking. Even though Xiao Su was the god of war who could remain unmoved in the face of thousands of soldiers and horses, he could not sit still when faced with his wife's unwavering gaze. He raised his hand to touch her face and pinch her chin. He asked, "What are you thinking about?" Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. She hid the smile in her eyes and said seriously, "Although Xiao Ran is your younger brother, he once coveted your wife. You're so assured to let me go?" Xiao Su chuckled softly. He leaned over and kissed her lips. He sucked and teased her lightly, making her dizzy. After they separated, she touched her burning face and waited for him in annoyance. She was talking about being serious, but he blocked her at the slightest disagreement. How indecent! She heard him laugh and say, "Everything is under my control. He can't do anything. Moreover, I believe that you have something to say to him." How confident! But she liked this kind of arrogance. Alright, then there's no time like the present. Let's do it today. She rubbed against his palm and turned into a clingy little kitten. Xiao Su stroked her face. He leaned over again and covered her with his body. Everyone in the hall was very perceptive and retreated. The wind was still cold, but where there was sun, it would still make people feel warm all over. Xiao Su sent Chu Qingyan to the entrance of a courtyard. He squeezed her palm and said, "Call me if you need anything. I will always be by your side." So worried? Then don't give in to me. Wasn't he very confident before? Why did he change his attitude in the blink of an eye? She teased him in amusement. You have to forgive a man for saying one thing and meaning another. Xiao Su openly admitted, without hiding anything. It was true that he was a 9-foot-tall man, but he did not mind letting his beloved know his love. Chu Qingyan's eyes softened as she bashfully looked at him. She liked this kind of big ice cube. He never hid his feelings for her and was proud of spoiling her. I know. I don't know what's going on, but you just lit up the skill of saying sweet nothings. I can't stand it at all. Although she said that, she was very happy. Before entering the courtyard, she turned her head and said awkwardly, you also have to get used to a woman saying one thing and meaning another. With that, she shyly slipped away with the help of Jasper and Xining. After Xiao Su understood her words, he held his forehead and could not help but laugh. The courtyard that Xiao Su arranged, whether it was lighting or ventilation, was very good. The leaves rustled and the shadows of the bamboos overlapped. It was a good place to chat. Xiao Ran was brought out of the sky prison an hour ago. At this time, he was sitting on a stone chair, looking around. Soon after, he sighed faintly. His eldest brother really loved Qin Yan to the bone. He was afraid that the imperial prison would be too dark and cold, which was why he chose this place. He must have spent a lot of manpower to bring her here. But since his eldest brother was so good to her, he was relieved. At this time, he heard a series of footsteps approaching. His heart suddenly became chaotic. Chapter 1493. Before he saw her, he was full of anticipation. When she came before him, he was timid and stiff all over. It was probably because he was more timid when he was close to her. When the footsteps were close enough, Xiao Ran slowly turned around. His eyes were full of anticipation and fear. When his gaze fell on that beautiful, picturesque face, the corners of his mouth pulled up, revealing a smile. Hi, Qingyan, long time no see. The sunlight shone on the two of them, as if drawing a large circle of light, separating them from the present time. In a trance, they returned to the pure and innocent times 6 years ago. She was the fearless transmigrator girl. And he was the boy who bullied others with his power and was taught a lesson by her. Youth was ignorant, youth was pure, youth was eternal beauty. Indeed, long time no see. You seem to have lost a lot of weight. Is the food bad? You're still growing, it's not good to be picky about food. How could Chu Qin not feel his uneasiness and nervousness? After sighing in her heart, she took the initiative to dissolve the awkwardness. The intimate voice of the beautiful woman in front of him, without any resentment, brought him back from his nostalgia. His rapid heartbeat finally calmed down. He touched his head, as if he had returned to his youthful self. He said embarrassedly, "It's just that my appetite hasn't been very good, but I've been eating well recently." Chu Qingyan's eyes heated up. She looked away, but her tone was somewhat unhappy. "What's wrong? Old friend, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Aren't you going to treat me to a cup of tea?" Xiao Ran only then realized that the two of them had been standing since they met. He didn't mind, but Qingyan was already pregnant. He hurriedly said, "Sit, I was so happy to see you that I forgot to greet you." He personally poured a cup of hot water for her. For some reason, when he poured the water, his hand kept trembling, spilling a lot of water on the table. However, Chu Qingyan pretended not to see it, but she felt a little sad. "I hope you don't mind my lack of hospitality. In the future." He scratched his head and smiled. "Let's not talk about the future. I'm relieved to see that you're happy now." Chu Qingyan glared at him. "Don't worry. Don't think that everything will be fine just because I have your eldest brother. When I give birth to the baby, you'll be its uncle. You'll have to prepare gifts for it when it's 1 month old and 1 year old. In the future, you'll have to teach it some skills so that no one can bully it." Xiao Ran kept laughing as he listened. He laughed so hard that his eyes turned red. "Qingyan, I'm so happy that you can say that. I'm so happy that I'm about to go crazy," he said sincerely. She pursed her lips and the smile on her lips turned into a soft sigh. "Xiao Ran, I'm very happy too. I'm really happy that you've changed for the better and know that you've done wrong." Xiao Ran slowly stopped laughing. He lowered his eyebrows and smiled bitterly. "If only I'd known earlier and stopped before I made a mistake. Perhaps it would have been better." Chu Qingyan was slightly stunned. At that moment, she didn't know what to say. Xiao Ran saw the pity in her eyes. His heart ached slightly. He tried to smile and asked, "You're pregnant, so let's not talk about those unhappy things. I heard that pregnancy is very difficult. Can you still bear it?" Speaking of the baby, her expression became gentle. She lowered her head and stroked her belly. She smiled and said, "Pregnancy is indeed very difficult, but my baby is quite obedient. Other than the initial torment, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm very glad. It seems that it'll be an obedient child in the future. That's great." Xiao Ran's gaze fell on her belly. He was a little surprised and a little emotional. It was really amazing. A human's pregnancy was simply an amazing project. That's hard to say. Some babies are extremely obedient in the womb, and once they're born, they'll throw all their weight around. As for me, I'm not asking for much. As long as it's born safely, I'll be happy. Chu Qingyan shook her head and smiled. Thus, the two of them talked about the baby for a while. Then they talked about the past. Just like that, time passed little by little under the warm sun and gentle breeze. Xiao Ran never thought that he and Qingyan would be able to sit together calmly one day and talk about the past and the present. When his extravagant wish became a reality, he was already very satisfied. As they chatted, Chu Qingyan looked a little tired. "Are you tired?" Xiao Ran asked with concern. Chu Qingyan smiled helplessly. "It's probably time to catch up on sleep. Ever since her body became heavy, she had to take a nap in the afternoon." Hearing this, Xiao Ran became nervous. "Then hurry back. More rest is good for the baby in your belly." Chu Qingyan looked at his appearance and couldn't help but be amused. Good. Look at how nervous you are. I'll come see you later." Xiao Ran wanted to reach out to help her up, but in the end, he hesitated and pulled his hand back. His gaze was fixed on the two palace maids supporting her. After Chu Qingyan stood still, she found that Xiao Ran was staring at her in a daze. She waved her hand in front of his face and said with a smile, "Why are you in a daze?" He wasn't in a daze. He wanted to engrave the voice and smile of the person in front of him into his memory. That way, no matter where he went, he wouldn't forget her. "Sorry. What?" Chu Qingyan was shocked by his sudden words. That I shouldn't have been distracted." He smiled embarrassedly. Only then did Chu Qingyan relax her back. She said unconcernedly, "It's fine. I'm going back. I'll come see you next time." Chu Qingyan turned and walked back the way she came. For some reason, she felt that something was wrong. Her heart clenched and felt uncomfortable. She wanted to go back and have a good chat with him, but when she thought about how she had already said goodbye, she gave up. Forget it, she'll come again next time. Only, she didn't know that there wouldn't be a next time. Many times, some people left without warning, just like when they first arrived. The smile in Xiao Ran's eyes slowly faded as he watched the gentle and slender figure slowly disappear into the small path through the flowers and willows. He was born in the imperial family and grew up in the imperial family. He was destined to face the deceit of others. Once he fell into it, he would never be able to turn it around. "Qingyan, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that our youthful days were covered in dust. I'm sorry that your sincere friendship for me changed it. I'm sorry for everything I did after that. If I could turn back time, I would definitely hide my love for you in my heart and not spread it out under the sun. Just like today, we talked so happily. It turned out that when you really cared about someone and wanted to give her happiness, it wasn't necessarily to possess her, but to sincerely wish her the happiness she wanted. How I wanted to go back to 6 years ago when we first met, to get to know you again, to accompany you, and to wish you well." He looked at the exquisite pastries on the table, some books that she had prepared for him because she was afraid that he would be bored, and some brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone. She was just like that. She was so considerate. When she was hurt, in the end, because she was soft-hearted, she repaid the evil with kindness. This was the person he liked. Unfortunately, there was no future. Xiao Ran tried his best to smile. "For the last time, I'll send you off with a smile." Chapter 1494. I also want to atone for my sins with merits, and I also want to realize that I'm on the right path, but the phrase, repent and be saved, doesn't suit me. I've already fallen too deep, and if I want to turn back, there will be people who won't stop trying to drag me down to hell. Xiao ran when Chu Qingyan walked out of the courtyard. Xiao Su was already waiting outside. She quickly walked over, and Xiao Su immediately reached out to hold her hand, then frowned. "Why is your hand so cold?" As he spoke, he wrapped her hand in his palm to warm her. Chu Qingyan replied absent-mindedly, "It should be because the wind is a little strong today." As soon as she finished speaking, Xiao Su had already taken off his cloak and draped it over her shoulders. He hugged her shoulders and pulled her into his embrace, and just like that he led her forward. "Looks like I'll have to let you wear thicker clothes when you go out in the future." Warmth instantly enveloped her body, and Chu Qingyan came back to her senses. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Then we'll really become a ball." "Then we still have to keep it warm," Xiao Su said firmly. Chu Qingyan laughed and shook her head, then let him be. "What were you thinking about just now? Why are you so engrossed in your thoughts?" Xiao Su asked as he tightened his grip on her clothes as they walked forward. Chu Qingyan still didn't think of hiding it from him, but she didn't think of hiding it. "I chatted a lot with Xiao Ran, and I could tell that he had already repented. But I don't know why, but when I left the courtyard, I felt very uneasy. Maybe Xiao Ran was too calm. It was different from what I imagined." Xiao Su focused and thought for a while. "He's really more sensible this time. Maybe it's because he's really repented. That's a good thing, you don't have to worry too much." Other than that, he couldn't find a reason to answer. Chu Qingyan nodded. "Maybe I'm thinking too much." At this moment, the baby in her stomach kicked her, successfully diverting her attention. "If you're worried about anything, I'll arrange for you to see him later." Chu Qingyan glanced at him. "My big ice cube is so generous." Xiao Su laughed. "What are you thinking?" "I think he just wants to be a good little brother now." "That's true." After the two sides looked at each other, they couldn't help but laugh. The black figure held the petite girl in his arms and slowly walked back. The sun was warm and the shadows of the trees were swaying. It was as if he could see the end of time from them. Near evening, Chu Qingyan woke up. After drinking a bowl of tonic soup and preparing to get up, a piece of news exploded in the air like thunder. Xiao Ran was gone. "What do you mean by gone?" Chu Qingyan was so shocked that she sat up from the couch. Her eyes were wide open, as if she hadn't heard what the other party had said. Jean Exin bowed and frowned. After His Highness returned to the prison, he took poison. By the time the guards found him, he was already dead. He had already gone. This sentence was like an invisible thread that tightened her heart bit by bit. Just 2 hours ago, she was still happily chatting with him, from the past to the present. He even laughed at her for being as thin as a bamboo pole when she was young. Just like that, that fair and clean young man disappeared from her life just like that? At this moment, Xiao Su, who had received the news, rushed back. When he appeared in the inner hall, Chu Qingyan seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She didn't even bother to put on her shoes as she jumped down from the couch and walked towards him. She grabbed onto his clothes, her eyes filled with tears. "They told me that Xiao Ran is dead. This can't be true, right?" Xiao Su lowered his eyes, sorrow in his eyes. "The news is correct. He has indeed left." Tears gushed out of her eyes. She hugged him and cried out in grief. Xiao Su picked her up and walked towards the bed. Then, he held her in his arms and silently accompanied her. After his subordinate came to report, he immediately rushed to the prison. When he reached the prison cell, he found that he couldn't even take a step forward. When he left, he was very peaceful. There was no pain. Chu Qingyan's tears were like a broken string of pearls. Hearing this, she choked out, "Big Ice Cube, can you understand that feeling? The person who was clearly talking and laughing with you just a moment ago is gone in the blink of an eye. When he's gone, it's not that he's no longer in front of you, it's that you'll never see him again. Big Ice Cube, I'm so sad." Xiao Su stroked her back, his voice low. "This feeling, how can I not feel the same? When I first came to the capital, I already knew him. And Dong Ting, they were all friends I've known since childhood. But now, one's life is unknown, and the other is separated forever. I feel that the heavens are so cruel. Seeing that the little fellow was crying so hard that she was about to faint, Xiao Su couldn't bear it. He patted her back and comforted her. Perhaps to Xiao Ran, this can truly free him. She raised her head and reached out to touch his face. She said helplessly and sadly, "Big ice cube, no matter what happens in the future, you can't leave me." He covered her hand and said seriously and firmly, "I won't. I'll always be by your side and our child's side." After getting his promise, Chu Qingyan leaned into his arms again. Tears flowed silently and she whispered, "We have to be good, good." Life was always moving and always losing. Sometimes, the person who said that he would accompany you to see the scenery would disappear the moment you turned around. So, while you could still reach out and hear the other party's voice, you had to cherish them well. Whether it was love, resentment, hatred, or pain, you would rather he or she live well in front of you than only be able to find traces of them in your memories. 2 days later, someone delivered several boxes, saying that they were ordered by Xiao Ran. Chu Qingyan asked someone to open them. There were all kinds of gifts neatly arranged inside. Rattles, butterflies, kites, rotating lanterns, beautiful bracelets, beautiful stones. They were packed up one by one, and each one was written with elegant words. For his nephew's full moon gift, first birthday gift, second birthday gift, coming of age gift, first birthday gift. Because he wasn't sure if it was a boy or a girl, he prepared a gift for each. She still remembered that day when she deliberately told him that she wanted to prepare a gift for her child's birthday. She didn't expect that he had already prepared it before he was arrested. Last year, when they met for the first time after 5 years apart, he also prepared a box of gifts for her to make up for the missing years of her birthday. Imagining the scene of him preparing these gifts with apologetic and expectant eyes, Chu Qingyan hugged those gifts and closed her eyes to cry silently. It turned out that before he robbed the execution ground, he had already lost his attachment to this mortal world. Even though he knew that it was an inescapable trap, he still stepped into it without any regrets. "Qingyan, you are my purest warmth in this world. You are my last memory of this mortal world. But how could I, who was filthy, dare to hold on to you, who was as clean as before? You are my most beautiful memory, my last trace of salvation in this world. But I've already missed you in this lifetime. I don't want to stay by your side with such a face. If there is an afterlife, I will live well and be a useful person. I will always bless you with peace and joy. My dear girl, goodbye." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.